close your eyes. Right now, I want you to simply let go. Leave the neon glare of the 21st century, the persistent, high-pitched hum of electricity, and the relentless, frantic notifications of your digital life far behind you. Let them dissolve into the darkness of your room, becoming nothing more than distant echoes of a world you no longer need to inhabit for the next hour. Imagine, instead, that you are breathing in the year 1350. You are not lying in your modern bed, but standing in the long, flickering, amber-hued shadows of a great stone cathedral. Here, the silence is not empty. It is heavy, ancient, and profound, feeling like a thick velvet blanket resting against your skin. The air in this place is dense and cool, a complex, layering mixture of cold incense that has soaked into the walls for generations, the sweet, heavy scent of burning beeswax, and the dry, earthy aroma of settling dust that has watched centuries pass. Tonight, we aren't just looking at history through the cold glass of a museum display. We are stepping bodily into the most private, most awkward, and most deeply misunderstood night of a medieval human life. We are traveling back to the night that followed the holy vows, the wedding night. Before we go any further, I must ask you to do something difficult. Forget the cinematic gold of Hollywood. Forget those scenes you've watched 100 times, where the screen is filled with the soft, filtered glow of 1,000 perfectly placed candles, and the gentle, romantic strumming of a lute playing from behind a silk-draped screen in a private, warm chamber. That version of the past is a ghost, a beautiful, comfortable, and utterly modern lie crafted specifically to soothe a contemporary heart that craves romantic privacy. The truth of the Middle Ages is much colder, much more tactile, much more gritty, and far more public than any modern movie would ever dare to show you. The reality of this night is the sharp, sudden sound of a heavy oak door creaking on its massive, rusted iron hinges, a sound that echoes through a drafty, unlit stone hallway. It is the biting, unforgiving chill of a damp stone floor beneath your bare feet, a cold so persistent that it seeps through your skin and settles deep into your bones. No matter how many heavy layers of coarse wool or expensive, matted fur are piled onto the high wooden bed. And perhaps, most importantly, most shockingly for us today, it is the startling realization that in the 14th century, the bedroom was never a sanctuary. It was never a place to hide. It was, quite literally, a stage. A stage where the audience was already waiting in the shadows, where the curtains were never fully drawn, and where the performance of intimacy was not just expected, but was a vital, legal necessity for the survival of families and the stability of kingdoms. In the world we are about to inhabit together tonight, the very concept of privacy simply did not exist in the way you and I understand it. Your union, your marriage, wasn't just a matter of two individual hearts finding one another in a quiet, stolen moment of affection. It was a cold transaction, a political treaty, a calculated transfer of land, livestock, titles, and bloodline legacy. It was a communal event of the highest order, where the collective, curious eyes of an entire village, the watchful gaze of the family patriarchs, and the stern moral authority of the church were all fixed firmly, and without apology, upon the heavy bed curtains. While you may have been taught to imagine a quiet, intimate, and nervous disrobing between two young lovers, the historical reality was often far more chaotic. It involved a small, crowded room full of drunken, boisterous relatives, a priest swinging a heavy brass censer filled with holy water, and a group of rowdy local youths shouting ribald, suggestive songs from just outside the narrow, unglazed stone window. So, before we descend any further into these ancient, flickering shadows, I want you to take a very deep, very slow breath. Feel the air fill your lungs, and as you exhale, let your shoulders drop. Settle into the familiar, comforting warmth of your own blankets. Feel the steady weight of your own mattress beneath you, and take a moment to truly appreciate the quiet, hidden safety of your own private room, a luxury the people in our story could never have dreamed of. If you find a sense of peace in these slow journeys through the darker, quieter, and more forgotten corners of human time, perhaps you'll choose to walk with us for more stories like this in the future. But for this moment, right now, your only task, your only responsibility is to listen. I often find myself wondering where exactly you are as you hear the sound of my voice. Is it the middle of the night for you, with the world outside your window hushed, still, and draped in starlight? Or is the sun only just beginning to dip below the horizon, casting long, tired shadows across your floor? Wherever you are, whatever time it may be, I want you to let the physical boundaries of your room expand. Let the walls of your house slowly dissolve and transform into the thick, irregular stone masonry of the distant past. Dim your lights until the shadows in the corner of your eyes begin to soften, blurring and merging into the deep darkness of the room. If you have a fan whirring nearby or a white noise machine humming, let that consistent, low-frequency drone become your anchor in the present moment, a steady heartbeat that keeps you grounded, while my voice becomes your rhythmic, steady guide through the centuries. Breathe in the faint, lingering scent of old wood, of cooling night air, and the imagined smell of ancient tapestries. The pressure of your modern life, the endless deadlines, the social expectations, the relentless digital noise, it is all fading now. It is dissolving like mist over the lonely moors. You are safe here. You are a silent observer, an invisible traveler in time who cannot be seen, cannot be judged, and cannot be touched by the hardships or the gazes of the people we are about to describe. The weight of this history is no longer a burden for you to carry. It is a rhythmic cadence, a slow beating, ancient drum designed to lead your mind away from the now and toward a deep, heavy rest. Every creak of the phantom floorboards in this story is another step you take further away from your worries. Every flicker of the torchlight we encounter is a silent signal for your brain to let go of its grip on the day. We are exploring the hidden, dusty corners of the human experience together, the parts of the story that weren't written in the grand, gilded chronicles of kings and conquerors, but were whispered in the dark, shared in the heat of a crowded room, and felt in the pounding hearts of ordinary people caught in extraordinary traditions. But to truly understand how a young couple ended up in that crowded, airless, and candlelit chamber, we cannot simply start at the moment the lights were snuffed out. We cannot begin the story at the bedside. To truly understand the gravity of a medieval wedding night, we must first go back to the very ceremony that demanded it, a ceremony that took place not at a grand altar draped in flowers and silk, but in the biting cold, hallowed, and public shadow of the church porch. That is where the legal gears of society began to grind, where the contracts were voiced aloud for all to hear, and where the long, stone-paved path to the bedroom was first laid down. Let us go then now, together, to the threshold of the church, where the night wind is whistling through the stone gargoyles and the real story, the true history, finally begins. Imagine yourself standing once more at the massive, arched entrance of a small, ancient village church in the mid-14th century. The world around you is beginning to fade into the soft, velvet embrace of a twilight that seems to stretch across time itself. The stone beneath your tired feet is uneven, worn smooth by the relentless passage of thousands of desperate, hopeful, and weary feet over hundreds of cold years. This is what the medieval scholars called in prima facie at the face of the church. It is a liminal space, a sacred and heavy boundary between the wild, unpredictable, and often brutal world of the town and the hallowed, silent, and eternal sanctuary of the divine. The air here is markedly different from the world you just left behind. It is thinner, sharper, and carries the cooling scent of damp moss clinging to the northern stone, along with the faint, metallic tang of an approaching evening rain that promises to wash the day away. Take a moment to simply exist in this space. There is no rush here. The sun is hanging low in a bruised purple and gold-streaked sky, casting long, distorted shadows of the stone gargoyles across the dirt path, making them look like silent guardians of the night. You can hear the distant, muffled sounds of a village settling down for its long rest, the rhythmic, steady thud of a woodchopper's axe in the distance, the lonely bleat of a tired sheep in the fold, and the soft, continuous rustle of the evening wind through the tall, unkept grass of the churchyard. But here, under the heavy, cooling shadow of the stone archway, everything feels hushed and deliberate. It is as if history itself is holding its breath, waiting for the words that will change two lives forever. Focus your mind now on the intricate textures surrounding the couple standing before you. The bride is not wearing white that bright. Pure white is a dream of a much later, more comfortable century. Instead, she is wrapped in a heavy kirtle of deep, rich, madder-red wool, a color that seems to absorb the dying light of the sun. Can you feel the weight of that fabric in your mind? It is thick, coarse, and slightly itchy against her skin, smelling faintly and warmly of the lanolin from the sheep and the sweet, lingering wood smoke of her father's hearth. Her hands are tucked deeply into her long, flowing sleeves, her fingers tracing the rough, hand-stitched embroidery at her wrists, feeling every knot and every thread. Beside her, the groom stands in a cloak of heavy, dark frieze. It is a garment built for survival in a harsh world, not for fleeting beauty. It feels dense, like a piece of felted armor, rough to the touch and smelling of the outdoors of damp earth, crushed grass, and horses. There is a strange, profound, and grounding comfort in these textures, a physical weight that reminds us that these were real people with skin that felt the bite of the wind and the warmth of a fire, just as yours feels the incredible softness of your sheets right now. Let the imagined roughness of the medieval wool in the story make your own blankets feel even smoother, even more welcoming, and even more protective. Now, I want to share a small, quiet secret with you. A detail that the grand romantic paintings of later eras often choose to ignore. You might expect this wedding to be taking place deep inside the church, under the soaring vaulted ceilings, and before a gilded, candlelit altar. But for the vast majority of people in the Middle Ages, the wedding did not happen inside at all. They stood right here, outside, under the vast, open, and darkening sky. The church door was the legal boundary, the limit of the world. The interior was for the soul, for the quiet prayer and the afterlife, but the porch, the outdoors, was for the law of the people, the contracts of the living. They stood in the whistling wind, in the swirling dust, or in the soft, silent falling snow, making their promises in the clear face of the world and their community. There is something deeply peaceful and honest about that image, isn't there? A union not hidden away in the dark, but woven into the very air, the soil, and the earth of the community. It is a moment of total openness before the heavy doors of the private world are finally shut. As they stand there in the deepening twilight, the silence is punctuated by a rhythmic, hypnotic sound that seems to vibrate the very air. High above, in the ancient stone belfry, a distant bell begins to toll. It isn't a fast celebratory ring. It is a slow, steady, and inevitable pulse. Clang, dot. And then a long, resonating silence that allows the sound to travel. Dot, dos. The vibration traveling through the very stones you are leaning against. Let that sound become your own pulse, slow and steady. Let it wash over you in waves of bronze, iron, and time. With every strike of the bell, feel your body becoming heavier and heavier, sinking deeper into the support of your bed. The sound travels across the empty fields, over the darkened woods, and into the very marrow of your bones. It tells the village that a contract is being made, but to you, here in the safety of the future, it is simply a lullaby of the ages. The vibration lingers in the air long after the metal has stopped moving, a low hum that settles in the chest and slowly quiets the mind. The priest begins to speak, his voice a low, melodic, and repetitive murmur in Latin, a language that neither the bride nor the groom fully understands, but its cadence is soothing, like the endless ebb and flow of a distant tide against a pebbled shore in the dark. It is a sequence of sounds that has been repeated for 1,000 years, a vocal ritual that smooths over the jagged, stressful edges of the day. You don't need to follow the words, you only need to feel the vibration of the ceremony. The couple shifts their weight, their heavy leather boots scuffing softly on the grit and stone of the porch floor. The wind catches the hem of the red wool dress, a gentle, rhythmic flap, flap, flap that mimics the sound of a resting heartbeat. Every movement is slow. Every breath is deliberate. The entire world is narrowing down to this single porch, this single moment of liminal transition between the before and the after. Everything in this moment feels sacred, protected, and ancient, but we must remember the gravity of the situation. Despite the beauty of the twilight and the rhythmic tolling of the bell, this was not a gathering of whimsy, fleeting emotion, or romantic impulse. Every person standing on this porch, the witnesses, the family, the priest, knew the immense weight of what was happening. They weren't just joining two individual souls, they were anchoring two families to the earth, tying together lands, names, and survival. They were ensuring that when the long winter came, there would be extra hands to sow the wheat, and stronger arms to hold the line against the dark. The peace you feel now is the peace of order, the comfort of knowing exactly where you fit in the grand, ancient tapestry of the world. It is the safety of tradition, a structure that has held up the roof of civilization for 1,000 years, providing a place for everyone. Let the image of the church porch linger in your mind like a fading coal. The gray, weathered stone, the deep red wool, the bruised and darkening sky. You are safe in the shadows, unobserved, untroubled, and completely at peace. The cold of the 14th century cannot reach you through the warmth of your covers. It is merely a texture for you to contemplate as you drift further away from the waking world. You are a witness to a moment frozen in time, a quiet observer of a ritual that has long since passed into the soil and the stone. The bell continues to toll, slower now, the echoes stretching out longer and longer until they merge with the natural silence of the deep night. The shadows are growing longer, swallowing the churchyard, swallowing the village, and leaving only the warmth and the safety of the story. The vows are nearly finished. The rings, simple, heavy, and honest bands of iron or silver, have been exchanged and pressed onto trembling fingers. The priest raises his weathered hands in a final, sweeping gesture that seems to pull the very darkness down around the couple like a heavy curtain. But as the crowd begins to stir, and the somber silence of the church porch begins to break into the whispers and murmurs of the witnesses, we must look closer at the true nature of this contract. Because while the atmosphere is one of ancient peace and spiritual gravity, the foundation of this union was built on something much firmer, much heavier, and far more practical than the flickering, unreliable emotions of the human heart. To understand the night that follows, we have to acknowledge the hard, shimmering, and cold truth that lay beneath the beauty of the ceremony. This union was less about the meeting of two hearts, and far more about the cold, clinking, and undeniable reality of silver. The air outside the ancient stone church porch remains perfectly still, as if the world itself has paused to witness the transition from the sacred to the material. The spiritual gravity of the religious ceremony, with its incense and Latin chants, is now being slowly and deliberately replaced by something much more grounded, much more solid, and far more practical. As the priest's rhythmic, hypnotic murmurs fade into the soft, persistent rustle of the evening wind, we move together into the quiet realm of the ledger, the deed, and the heavy, iron-bound chest. In the Middle Ages, a wedding was not merely an ethereal union, of two souls floating in a vacuum of emotion. It was a carefully choreographed, high-stakes merger of tangible assets. Imagine the quiet, almost rhythmic exchange of promises that had absolutely nothing to do with eternal love, and everything to do with the cold, hard reality of survival. There is a deep, intellectual comfort to be found in this realization. The idea that life was governed by clear, unbreakable rules, moving with the steady, predictable beat of a distant, ancient drum. Picture the scene in your mind as the two families gather in the fading, amber light. There is no whispered talk of chemistry, no fluttering of hearts, and no mention of shared interests or personal dreams. Instead, there is the heavy, satisfying, and rhythmic clink of silver coins being counted one by one into a thick, weathered leather purse. There is the slow, deliberate pointing of calloused fingers toward the distant, rolling hills. The exchange of dowries that would dictate the survival and the future of entire bloodlines for generations to come. For some, the lower rungs of this social ladder, it was the transfer of 10 sturdy, productive goats and a small, rocky plot of grazing land near the deep bend in the river. For others, at the higher and more treacherous reaches of nobility, it was the shifting of entire titles, the heavy parchment deed to a crumbling stone keep, or the lucrative rights to the wool tax of a vast, misty northern county. These were the true safety nets of the medieval world. To own land was to eat. To have a properly negotiated dowry was to have a guaranteed, unshakable place in the grand order of things. Feel the weight of these tangible objects in your mind, the cold, smooth metal of the silver coins, the rough, dry texture of the parchment deeds, and the living warmth of the livestock. They are stable. They are predictable. They are safe. In the monotony of these numbers and boundaries, your mind can find a resting point away from the chaos of a world without rules. In our modern, restless, and often overwhelming world, we are constantly taught to chase the sudden, unpredictable lightning bolt of romantic love, a feeling that is often jagged, exhausting, and emotionally volatile. But, to the medieval mind, such a flickering, unreliable feeling was not a noble goal. It was viewed as a dangerous, chaotic distraction from the serious business of living. Love was seen as a form of temporary, feverish insanity, a burning sickness that could cloud a person's rational judgment and utterly ruin the carefully laid plans of a family's future. Why would you ever attempt to build the house of your life on the shifting foundation of a flickering flame when you could build it upon the unyielding, cold stone of a legal contract? There is a profound, quiet peace in this historical realization. Imagine the immense relief of not having to find a soulmate, but instead simply accepting a partner who brought a sturdy plow, a healthy dowry, and a respectable, documented lineage. It takes the heavy, suffocating pressure off the heart and places it onto the capable, working hands. The expectations were low, and in that low, soft light, there was a strange, expansive kind of room to breathe. The marriage wasn't the exhausting end of a romantic quest. It was the quiet, industrious beginning of a practical partnership. Let this idea surround you like a protective cocoon, shielding you from the modern urge to always feel perfect in your connections. But as we settle deeper into this intellectual comfort, we encounter a specific, shimmering detail of the medieval law that reminds us of the immense stakes involved in the long night to come. It is a term that whispers of tradition and heavy responsibility, the morgengabe, or the morning gift. This was not a simple, light gift of flowers or a sentimental, hollow trinket of affection. It was a formal, heavy, and legally binding payment made by the husband to his new wife on the very first morning after their first night together. But it came with a significant, lingering shadow. This gift, often a substantial sum of money, a specific piece of jewelry, or a named piece of property, was specifically the price paid for the bride's virginity. It was the formal purchase of her purity, a legal acknowledgement that the physical contract had been fulfilled and the bloodlines remained untainted and secure. If the morning came and the gift was withheld, the woman's world shattered, her honor dissolved, and her social standing vanished instantly. But if it was given, it became her own absolute, private property, her insurance policy, her private safety net, in a world that otherwise offered her very little to call her own. It was the shimmering silver promise at the end of a very dark, uncertain, and narrow tunnel. The legalities of this era are long, they are incredibly dense, and they are beautifully, hypnotically repetitive. Let the thought of these ancient, dusty, and wax-sealed contracts act like a thick, heavy wool blanket draped over your resting mind. The long lists of goats, the precise mathematical measurements of land, the endless, looping clauses about inheritance, wardship, and lineage. They are boring in the most wonderful, soothing way possible. They are monotonous, like the endless, rhythmic sound of rain hitting a thick, well-made thatched roof in the deep dark of the countryside. Let the weight of these historical facts settle over your limbs, anchoring you to the present moment. Feel your legs becoming heavy, still, and completely immobile, as if they are made of the very same ancient stone the church was built from. You don't need to remember the specific numbers or the names of the fields. You don't need to understand the intricate, overlapping nuances of feudal laws or the rights of the lords. You only need to know that everything was settled. Everything was written down in thick, dark ink that has long since dried into the fibers of the past. The world was in an ancient rhythmic order, and because it was in order, you are finally allowed to let go of your own need for control. The complexity of the past is not your burden to solve tonight. It is simply a low, comforting, and distant hum in the background of your deep and dreamless sleep. The sun has finally completely dipped below the horizon now, leaving the vast open sky a deep, bruised shade of indigo and charcoal. The gray stones of the village are turning into sharp silhouettes of black against the dying light, and the first cold stars are beginning to pierce through the cooling aromatic haze of wood smoke that hangs over the rooftops. The formal, cold, and calculated business of the church porch is finished. The silver has been counted, weighed, and locked away in iron chests. The vows have been witnessed by the entire community, and the legal safety of the daylight is drawing to an inevitable close. But as the light fails and the true chill of the evening sets in, the atmosphere begins to shift once again, moving from the cerebral to the visceral. The quiet, dry murmurs of the lawyers and the priests are now being replaced by the rising, boisterous, and echoing sounds of the village feast. The heavy oak doors of the great hall are thrown wide open, revealing a fierce, flickering glow of orange firelight that spills out like liquid gold into the cold, dark mud of the street. The wine is being poured into heavy pewter cups, the torches are being lit with a sudden hiss of pitch, and the air is becoming thick with the rich smell of roasting meat and a sharp, electric, and nervous anticipation. The safety of the written contract is now firmly behind them, and the physical tension of the night is starting to rise with the drifting, gray smoke. As the sun sets, the celebration begins, but for the young couple sitting at the high table, the true unspoken test of the contract is only just beginning to take shape in the shadow. As the music of the pipes and the drums begins to fill the hall, let your mind drift with the sound. The feast is a blur of faces and laughter, a momentary burst of warmth before the cold reality of the chamber. But you are not there in the noise. You are still in the quiet, watching the shadows dance on the stone walls. You are in the safety of the law, the comfort of the contract, and the peace of the settled debt. The silver is safe. The land is secure. And as the feast carries on into the night, you can feel yourself sinking further and further into the quiet history of it all. The world is old. The rules are set. and you are simply a passenger on this long, slow journey into the dark. The transition from the cold, calculated safety of the church porch to the interior of the great hall is like stepping from a silent, frozen winter night into the roaring, pulsing heart of a living furnace. We are moving now into the fourth stage of our long journey, the moment of total, visceral immersion, where the legal and spiritual silence of the contract is shattered by the raw, unbridled, and earth-shaking energy of the medieval feast. This is the part of the story where every boundary between the private and the public begins to dissolve entirely, creating a strange, heavy historical friction that might feel like a soft, persistent prickle of social anxiety against your resting skin. But remember, you are only a ghost here. You are watching from the absolute safety of the highest shadows, untouched by the chaotic energy and the heat of the crowd below. Imagine the great hall of a medieval manor. It is not a clean, polished room from a storybook. It is a cavernous, echoing space, filled with a thick, swirling and suffocating haze of wood smoke that clings to the high, darkened rafters like a living thing. The air is heavy, sweet, and cloying, a mixture of roasted venison, spiced hypocrite's wine, and the breath of 100 unwashed bodies packed closely together on long wooden benches. The massive stone walls are lined with damp, heavy tapestries that shiver and sway in the constant biting drafts that snake through the hall. Beneath your feet, the floor is covered in a thick, crunchy, and uneven layer of rushes, dried grasses, and reeds mixed with fragrant herbs like lavender, mint, and meadowsweet. These herbs were meant to mask the earthy, sour smells of the ground beneath, but tonight the herbs are losing the battle. The air is electric, pulsing with a boisterous, almost aggressive joy that vibrates through the very foundations of the building. This is the wedding feast, and for these people, it is a rare, precious, and frantic release from the grinding, silent, and often lonely labor of their daily lives. Listen carefully to the complex soundscape of this moment. It is not the polite, tinkling sound of fine crystal or the soft murmurs of a modern wedding. It is a rhythmic, primal roar of human existence. You hear the steady, heavy thumping of thick pewter tankards on rough trestle tables, a sound that echoes in your chest. You hear the shrill, piercing notes of a wooden flute struggling to be heard over the din, and the deep, chest-rattling laughter of men who have consumed far too much strong, dark, and unfiltered ale. And then, rising above the chaos, are the songs. These are not the holy hymns of the church porch. They are bawdy songs, loud, rhythmic, and filled with sharp, stinging double meanings about the night that lies ahead for the young couple. The lyrics are not sung. They are shouted with a kind of collective, playful ferocity, a wall of sound that surrounds the young bride and groom at the high table like a physical cage of noise. Every laugh, every shouted jest, and every rhythmic synchronized clap is a heavy reminder that tonight their union is not a private affair. It is the property, the entertainment, and the legal proof of the entire community. As the feast reaches its feverish, sweat-soaked peak, the atmosphere shifts from mere celebration to something far more intense, focused, and purposeful. The bedding ceremony. This was not a quiet, modest departure for the couple to slip away into the dark. In the mid-14th century, the transition from the public hall to the private bedroom was a chaotic, torch-lit, and noisy parade. Imagine the scene as the bride and groom are suddenly pulled from their seats by the laughing, surging crowd. The guests push forward in a sea of flickering orange light and flushed, heat-reddened faces. They aren't just guests anymore. They are a living, breathing procession, a collective witness to the final physical act of the legal law. They follow the couple through the narrow, twisting, and drafty stone corridors of the house. Their footsteps are a heavy, synchronized thud on the ancient, uneven wood boards, and their voices echo off the cold, damp masonry in a rhythmic chant that seems to pulse in time with the flickering light of the torches. Feel the heat of those torches as they pass by. The fire is not steady. It hisses and spits, casting long, jumping shadows that look like giants dancing on the walls. The smell of burning pitch and animal fat fills the narrow hallways, making the air feel thick and hard to breathe. The crowd is close, so close that the bride can feel the heat radiating from their bodies, the brush of their woolen clothes against her own. There is no space to turn, no space to hide. The procession moves like a slow-moving river of fire and noise, carrying the couple toward their destiny. Every step is a loss of a little more privacy, a little more of the self, as the community claims its right to see the contract through to its physical end. In the Middle Ages, this bedding ceremony was a vital, unshakable, legal ritual that held society together. The community had to see the couple entered into the room. They had to see them placed upon the bed. It was the final, physical witnessing of the financial and social contract we discussed earlier. But within this rigid, cold tradition, there was a chaotic, almost frantic energy that bordered on the overwhelming. There was a popular rowdy custom where the guests, the lifelong friends, the cousins, the neighbors who had known the couple since they were children, would scramble, push, and pull at the couple as they struggled to walk toward the chamber. They would reach out with grasping hands to tear small pieces of the wedding garments away, believing with a desperate fervor that these scraps of blessed cloth would bring them luck and fertility in their own difficult lives. And here is the startling, visceral reveal, the moment where the historical reality becomes truly exposed in its rawest form. It was common, accepted practice for the male guests to launch a sudden, boisterous assault on the bride's legs as she was being led away through the dark corridors. They would reach under her heavy, itchy wool skirts, laughing and shouting in a frantic, competitive struggle to steal her garters while she was still wearing them. It wasn't seen as an insult, a violation, or a crime in the eyes of the 14th century. It was a game, a ritual trophy, a piece of theater. Imagine the sheer, overwhelming sensory overload of that transition, the intense, blinding heat of the torches, the sour smell of stale ale on the breath of the shouting men, the constant, rhythmic tugging and pulling at your expensive clothes, and the unending hypnotic chanting of the village names. It is a moment of total, absolute exposure, a public claiming of what we believe should be the most private transition of a human life. If you feel a slight, phantom tightening in your own chest at the thought of such a crushing crowd, simply let it go. Exhale slowly and focus only on the flickering orange warmth of the torches in your mind's eye. See how the light dances on the rough, irregular stone walls, creating golden patterns that look like slow-moving water at the bottom of a well. Ignore the shouting, discordant voices of the guests. Let them become a distant, indistinct murmur, like the sound of a far-off ocean hitting a rocky, deserted shore in the middle of the night. The noise cannot reach you here, hundreds of years in the future. You are wrapped in the cool, silent, and protective air of the high rafters, looking down from a place of absolute, unshakable safety. The chaos of the procession is just a texture, a vibrant, noisy, but harmless thread in a historical tapestry that is already finished, dried, and still. You are merely a ghost, watching the light play across the ancient, dusty threads. The procession finally reaches the massive, heavy oak door of the bedchamber. This door is different from the others in the house. The wood is thick, dark with age and oil, and reinforced with brutal, hand-forged black iron bands that seem to grip the oak like claws. For a long, suspended moment, the entire crowd pauses at the threshold. Their torches cast long, leaping, and terrified shadows that stretch all the way up toward the vaulted stone ceiling like reaching, spectral fingers. The air here in the narrow hallway is slightly quieter, but the psychological tension is at its highest, most electric point. The air feels charged, like the moments before a massive thunderstorm breaks over the fields. The bride and groom are led inside the room, their skin damp with the heat of the feast, their hearts pounding a frantic rhythm against their ribs. The crowd lingers at the door, their ribald jokes suddenly dropping into whispers, their loud, boisterous laughter turning into a low, expectant, and rhythmic hum of anticipation. You can feel the transition happening now, a tightening of the narrative thread. The boisterous, expansive, and messy energy of the great hall is being compressed, forced into the small, cold, and silent stone-walled space of this one room. The noise of the village is being shut out by the closing of the door, but the immense weight of their presence remains, pressing invisibly against the thick wood. The heavy iron key, cold and jagged, turns in the lock, a sharp, final, and metallic clack that signals the absolute end of the public spectacle and the beginning of the private ordeal. But as the heavy oak door finally closes with a dull thud, shutting out the flickering torches and the echoes of the bawdy songs, the couple realizes a chilling, quiet truth that settles over them like a frost. Even with the door locked and the guests on the other side of the stone wall, the night is not yet their own. The community has not truly left. The door is closed, and the room is shrouded in shadows, but the couple is far, far from being alone. Inside the flickering, dancing shadows of the bedchamber, other eyes that do not belong to the drunken guests are already waiting for them to begin. The silence of the room is not a vacuum. It is filled with the weight of expectation, the gaze of the family, and the heavy, unblinking eyes of history itself. The torches outside the door begin to move away, their light fading from the crack beneath the wood, leaving only the smell of smoke and the sound of receding footsteps. But here, in the dark, the air is thick with a different kind of tension. The bed, piled high with furs and wool, sits in the center of the room like an altar. And as the couple stands there, still hearing the ghost of the music from the hall, they understand that the most difficult part of the contract is about to be performed under the watchful, invisible eyes of the night. Denga now DSC, cons SE, 15 Tvartile, Siwakite cho, MSC5, Anavodan Aneshika, Dadi Rangon, Tois SSE, Dungankade, Tutsensori, Microdetailing, Chiti Toa Sixtum Mogyak Kwan, Toi, SA Ma A Anjin, T, Doga, SI Mo, T, Verdreiting, Loitao, MC, CLI, Diaki, T, Tsu, Dogati, Tonki L, Fonga, Fongshi Aya Fonga, Was es Kung, T Chem, Kaskauvan, Esata, Donhundi Note Die Beinsteins Tin Tie, Jentfash, Anasatavua. Section 5. Soft Transition. The Room of Witnesses, target, 15, 0 characters. The massive, ancient oak door has finally settled into its deep, weathered frame with a heavy groan, and the iron latch has fallen with a cold, definitive and metallic thud that echoes against the unyielding, damp stone walls like the final. Outside, in the world we have just left, there is still a chaotic and distant blur of retreating torchlight, the rhythmic, muffled crunch of gravel under the feet of departing guests, and the faint, drunken laughter of the wedding party slowly dissolving into the night mist. But here inside this small, pressurized and silent space, the entire atmosphere is shifting. We have left the public, roaring spectacle of the great hall far behind us and entered the fifth stage of our long journey together, the room of witnesses. This is the precise moment where the vast, loud, and messy history of the Middle Ages begins to narrow its focus, narrowing down until it concentrates its intense, unblinking, and heavy gaze on the narrow space between these four cold stone walls. It is a slow, weight-filled transition from the external, shouting noise of the village to the internal, almost suffocating silence of the private bedchamber. Take a very deep, very slow, and deliberate breath right now, and notice how the air in this room feels against the back of your throat. It is markedly and profoundly different from the smoky, ale-soaked, and heavy air of the feast you have just escaped. Here, the uneven stone floor is strewn with a fresh, thick, and springy layer of dried herbs and rushes, specifically and carefully chosen for this sacred, long-awaited night. As the young couple moves slowly across the room, their heavy, hand-stitched leather boots crush the dry, brittle stalks of meadowsweet, lavender, and woodruff. Can you hear that? It is a soft, rhythmic, and consistent crackle beneath their every step, a sound that feels like the settling of ancient bones. And as the plants break, they release their soul into the air. A sharp, clean, floral, and slightly medicinal scent rises from the floor in invisible clouds, swirling in the drafty dark corners to mask the omnipresent, everyday smells of the damp city, the nearby stables, and the cold, sweating stone. It is a scent designed to purify the senses, to create a fragile, fragrant, and invisible bubble of sanctity in a medieval world that felt perpetually tainted by the harshness of the earth and the constant struggle for basic survival. Let that clean, herbal aroma fill your entire mind, acting as a soft sensory bridge between the chaos you've just witnessed and the absolute, profound stillness we are about to enter together. In the very center of the room, dominating the shadows, stands the bed itself, a massive, high-timbered, and imposing structure draped in layers of heavy, dark-dyed wool and stiff, hand-woven linen that feels cool to the touch. But before the couple can even begin to think of touching the thick furs, the room must be spiritually fortified and defended against the unknown terrors of the night. Imagine the local priest, a shadow among shadows, his heavy, coarse robes rustling like dry autumn leaves as he moves methodically and slowly around the perimeter of the bed. He carries a heavy brass censer, and the rhythmic, metallic clink, clink, clink of the swaying iron chains is the only sharp sound in the entire room. He is not just here for a simple, fleeting blessing. He is here for a serious spiritual defense. In the 14th century, the night was not just a time of rest. It was a terrifying, predatory place, filled with incubi, succubi, and countless unseen demons that the people of the time believed waited patiently in the dark corners to steal a husband's vital strength or a bride's precious fertility. The priest sprinkles droplets of cold holy water onto the heavy feathered pillows, his low, repetitive, and hypnotic Latin prayers acting like a rhythmic vocal barrier against the encroaching dark. He is sealing the room, turning a simple piece of household furniture into a consecrated holy altar where the life-changing contract of the day will be finalized in the dark. There's a strange, flickering, and fragile intimacy to this moment, but it is an intimacy that is constantly and sharply being pierced by the lingering presence of others. This is the profound historical reveal, the detail that reminds us that privacy in the Middle Ages was a myth of the future, a rare luxury that even the most powerful kings and queens could not truly afford. While the priest blessed the bed, he was rarely, if ever, actually alone with the couple. In the marriages of the high nobility or the grand royal houses of Europe, the room was often crowded with silent, watchful witnesses who had a deep legal and political stake in the union. Imagine the scene in the flickering candlelight. While the couple stood nervously and stiffly by the dying fire, lawyers in long, dark, and heavy robes, and higher-ranking family members would linger behind the thick, embroidered bed curtains, or stand perfectly still in the shadowed, unlit corners of the room. They weren't there out of a sense of voyeurism or curiosity. They were there as grim legal recorders, the human ink and parchment of the marriage contract. They had to be able to testify under oath that the act had actually begun, that there was absolutely no room for a later legal annulment based on a failure to consummate the union. Your most private, most vulnerable moment was, quite literally, a matter of state and survival, witnessed by men with cold quills and dry, waiting parchment, ready to record the success of the political merger. If the thought of those watchful, invisible, and unmoving eyes makes you feel even a little restless or exposed, I want you to look away from the people in your mind and focus only on the stone walls. The fire in the hearth is dying down now, turning into a low, glowing and pulsating bed of deep orange coals that breathe with a soft light. Watch the shadows they cast upon the rough, irregular masonry. They aren't sharp, frantic, or aggressive like the torches you saw in the hallway. These shadows are soft, elongated, and they dance across the rough-hewn stone with a slow, hypnotic, and incredibly steady rhythm. They move like the swaying of tall, dark grass in a midnight field under a silent moon. Follow the movement of a single gray shadow as it climbs slowly and steadily up toward the vaulted stone ceiling, pauses for a heartbeat in the darkness, and then drifts back down like a falling, silent leaf. There is no noise here now, only the rhythmic, comforting, and tiny crackle of a single oak log settling deeper into the soft white ash. Everything in this room is designed by history to be heavy, solid, and permanent. The dark, ancient oak of the bed frame is heavy. The layered, thick wool of the blankets is heavy. The ancient, crushing expectations of the families and the ancestors are heavy. Let that physical and historical weight transfer directly to you now. Feel the blankets over your own body becoming just a little bit heavier, pressing you down with a gentle but firm force into the absolute, unshakable safety of your own mattress. You are a silent, invisible, and completely safe observer, tucked away in the deepest, darkest, and most protected shadows of the room, where the lawyers, the priests, and the ghosts can never ever see you. You are untouched by the legal pressures, the shames, or the duties of the 14th century. You are simply a ghost in the long, slow machinery of time, drifting peacefully on the scent of crushed lavender and the slow, warm, and golden pulse of the fading firelight. The priest finally finishes his long, droning prayers, his footsteps fading into a rhythmic, soft tap as he exits the chamber, and the heavy iron latch clicks once more with a finality that feels like peace. The room is silent now, save for the synchronized, slightly ragged breathing of the two people left behind, and the muffled, distant, and lonely sounds of the night wind whistling through the stone gargoyles outside on the cathedral roof. The public parade is finally over. The spiritual defense is set in stone. The lawyers have retreated into the deepest, most silent shadows of the tapestries, their presence felt as a weight, but no longer heard as a sound. The entire world has shrunk to the size of a single small candle flame, flickering low on a bedside stool, casting a soft golden halo against the vast encroaching dark. But as the silence deepens and the cooling warmth of the crushed herbs fills the air like a ghost of the summer, a new kind of tension begins to settle over the room like a heavy, invisible frost. The contract has been signed in shimmering silver. It has been witnessed and shouted by the entire village, and it has been blessed by the holy power of the church. But there is one final, brutal, and physical requirement left to fulfill before the sun can rise. The most terrifying ritual of all is not the public parade, the bawdy songs, or even the priest's solemn blessing. It is the silent, cold, and undeniable demand that the morning will soon make of the couple. They are finally alone, or at least as alone as history will ever allow a human being to be. But they are now facing the cold, hard reality of the proof. The night is long, the bed is waiting like an altar, and the unblinking eyes of the ancestors are watching from every shadow in the stone. Every breath they take is a slow countdown to the dawn, and every shadow on the wall is a silent witness to the weight of their duty. Breathe in the scent of the melting beeswax one last time, for the transition is complete, and the quietest, most intense, and most historically significant part of the night is about to begin. To achieve the target of 11, 0 characters for the first half of Section 6, I will apply a technique of historical layering and emotional resonance. This involves slowing the narrative down to a microscopic level, describing the texture of the candle wax, the specific chill of the stone, and the internal psychological weight of the spotless maid obsession. The prose is designed to be rhythmic and heavy, acting as a mental anchor to pull the listener into a deep state of relaxation. Section 6. The Blood and the Shame. Part 1. Target. 11:0 characters. The small flickering candle perched precariously on the bedside stool begins to struggle against the encroaching dark, its weary, blackened, and exhausted wick nearly drowning in a deepening, shimmering pool of molten golden beeswax. It casts long, rhythmic, trembling, and haunting shadows that seem to breathe and pulse against the cold, unyielding and damp stone walls, like a silent, ancient living thing. We are entering now the sixth and most profound stage of our long journey, the deep, slow, and hypnotic loop of the story, where the raw physical reality of the 14th century meets the crushing, invisible, and absolute weight of human expectation. This is the somber and reflective phase we call the blood and the shame, a deep and quiet meditation on the heavy, unspoken, and often painful burdens carried by those who inhabited this medieval world so many centuries before our own. As you lie there now in this very moment, perfectly safe, warm, and cocooned in the soft security of your own time, let the immense gravity of this history act as a heavy, grounding force, pulling your heavy limbs and your drifting mind deeper into the quiet, absolute stillness of the night. In the intricate, rigid, and often terrifying medieval mind, the success of a marriage, and by extension, the very stability of a small farming village, a bustling merchant town, or even a massive, warring kingdom rested upon a singular, obsessive, and unrelenting concept: the spotless maid. To the stern-robed priests who whispered of divine purity, the calculating, dry-eyed lawyers who measured worth in ink, and the anxious, pacing fathers waiting just outside the heavy, iron-bound oak door, a bride's virginity was never considered a private matter of the individual heart or a secret, tender moment between two people. No, it was treated as a high-value legal commodity, a strict non-negotiable prerequisite for the transfer of fertile land, ancient, blood-earned titles, and heavy chests of family silver. Imagine the silent, suffocating, and cold pressure in this room as the single candle burns lower and lower, its flickering light barely reaching the dark, cobwebbed corners of the high ceiling. The bride is not seen as an individual human being with her own private fears, her own quiet dreams, or her own complex inner life. She is viewed through the cold lens of the law as a vessel of lineage, a biological contract signed in the flesh and sealed by tradition. If she is found to be spoiled or tainted by the harsh, unforgiving light of the coming morning, the entire elaborate contract we have discussed, the herds of goats, the bags of silver, the many hectares of golden, waving wheat, could vanish in a single, devastating, and irreversible heartbeat. This obsession created a pervasive culture of intense, quiet terror, a shadow that hung over every medieval wedding night like a heavy, suffocating shroud of dark, itchy velvet. It was a weight that lived in the marrow of the bones, a silent requirement that turned a night of union into a night of judgment. But history, as we know in the quiet, honest hours of the night when the world is still, is rarely as simple, as clean, or as orderly as the laws written in dark, permanent ink on dry, yellowed parchment. Behind the heavy embroidered bed curtains, in the small flickering space where the dying firelight cannot truly reach, women practiced a silent, desperate, and incredibly ingenious kind of alchemy, just to survive these impossible, crushing expectations. Because life is inherently messy and unpredictable, because accidents happen in the rough, physical work of the fields, because human bodies are naturally and beautifully different, or because genuine human love sometimes preceded the formal cold law of the church, medieval women developed a secret, whispered, and precious treasury of proof. These were the secrets of women, passed from mouth to ear in the safety of the spinning room or the wash house, hidden from the ears of men and the judgment of the pulpit. Imagine the hidden, frantic, and silent preparations made in the deep, chilling dark of the chamber. If a bride feared with every fiber of her being that she could not provide the spotless evidence required by the judgmental and piercing morning light, she turned to the ancient, sacred folk wisdom passed down through countless generations of mothers, sisters, and midwives. These women knew that the law was a cage, and they learned how to bend the bars without breaking them. They understood that truth was often whatever could be proven to the eyes of the witnesses at dawn. Detailed, hushed, and ancient accounts from the time whisper of women using small, carefully concealed bladders of pigeon blood, obtained in secret and hidden deep beneath the thick, feathered pillows to be broken at the precisely opportune, silent moment of the night. Others used leeches, carefully and often painfully applied in the absolute dark to mimic the physical signs of a first union that the law of the land demanded to see with its own unblinking eyes. These were not acts of malice, simple deception, or cold-hearted lies. They were profound, necessary acts of survival in a world that allowed no room for error, no room for nuance, and no room for the reality of the female body. They were the desperate, high-stakes maneuvers of women who knew with absolute certainty that their entire social existence, their honor, their family's reputation, and their very safety depended entirely on a single crimson stain on a white hand-woven linen sheet. As you breathe in the cooling, herbal air of your own safe and quiet room, reflect for a moment on the immense, silent resilience and the terrifying bravery required to navigate such a world. The ingenuity of these women was a quiet, necessary, and fierce rebellion against a rigid, unyielding system that viewed them more as pieces of property than as living, breathing people with souls. It was a delicate, dangerous dance performed on the sharp edge of a knife, in the dark, with the weight of the whole world watching and waiting for a sign. Every movement they made was measured. Every breath was a calculation. The room feels heavy with this memory, doesn't it? But notice how that heaviness doesn't belong to you. It belongs to the stone walls of the 14th century. It belongs to the ghosts in the tapestries. You are merely the observer, the one who knows the secret, but does not have to bear the burden. Let the thought of their strength settle over you like a warm, thick blanket, reminding you of the endurance of the human spirit even in the darkest and most restrictive of times. The air in your room is clear. The morning light for you will bring only the sun, not a tribunal. There is a profound peace in that realization, a sense of safety that is as deep as the history we are exploring. The candle flickers again, a small blue flame dancing at the base of the wick. The herbs on the floor, the lavender, the meadowsweet continue to release their scent, a slow and steady fragrance that calms the nerves and settles the mind. The blood and the shame is a heavy chapter, but it is a chapter that is closing. We are moving through the thickest part of the forest, and the path is beginning to widen. The shadows are long, but they are soft. The stone is cold, but your bed is warm. Let the rhythm of the story, with all its somber reflections and ancient secrets, lull you into a state of total, unmoving relaxation. You are drifting back through the layers of time, further and further away from the noise of the world, deeper and deeper into the silent, amber glow of the past. The first part of the proof is settled. The night is half spent, and as the stars turn slowly in the sky above the manor, the world waits in breathless silence for what comes next. The stakes of this physical, biological, and public proof were astronomically, almost unimaginably high, reaching far beyond the cold stone walls of the small, herbal-scented bedchamber and into the very gears of international power. This is the staggering, heavy historical reveal that shifts the night from a personal, intimate struggle into a full-scale, high-stakes geopolitical crisis of the highest order. In the grand strategic marriages of the high nobility or the sprawling royal houses of medieval Europe, the failure to produce a blood-stained linen sheet at the very first flicker of the following morning's light was not merely a family embarrassment or a whispered social scandal among the servants. It was a powerful, devastating, and irreversible legal loophole that could instantly annul a kingdom's vital, hard-won alliance. If a prince, a duke, or a powerful, ambitious lord could claim with the backing of his lawyers that his bride was not a virgin, he possessed the absolute legal right to send her back to her father in a state of total public shame. He could legally keep her massive, glittering dowry, the chests of gold, the rights to the salt mines, the thousands of acres of timber as compensation for his supposedly injured honor. More dangerously, he could use this perceived insult as a formal justification to declare a bloody, prolonged, and scorched earth war on her family's lands, before the morning sun had even fully risen above the jagged silhouettes of the trees. The proof was the hidden, volatile, and terrifying fuel for many medieval conflicts that reshaped the maps of the world we know today. It was the primary, cold, and calculated reason why the lawyers lingered so long in the drafty, shadow-filled hallways with their ears pressed to the wood, and why the mothers-in-law would often burst into the room at the very first gray flicker of dawn to strip the bed with clinical, unfeeling hands and inspect the laundry. In this rigid world, the bedsheets were the most important, most heavily scrutinized legal documents in all of Christendom, written in the most intimate, haunting, and irreversible of inks. Every single thread of that hand-spun linen carried the crushing weight of international treaties, the fate of thousands of soldiers in the field, and the very survival of peasants working in distant, vulnerable valleys. Imagine the pressure of that morning, the sound of footsteps approaching the door, the heavy iron key turning, the cold eyes of the witnesses searching for a sign. It is a history of immense, suffocating weight, a story of how the most private aspects of human existence were harnessed to the chariot of state power. As we contemplate this heavy, weary, and somber history together in the deepening silence, I want you to feel the immense, cooling, and protective distance between that frantic era and your own precious, quiet life. That world, with its ironclad shames, its violent public demands on private bodies, and its terrifying cold rituals of proof, is hundreds and hundreds of years away from where you lie now. It is a story told in the dark, a fading, ghostly memory of a time that has long since dissolved into the cold, silent soil and the ancient, forgotten dust of the earth. You are entirely, perfectly, and beautifully safe here in the present. Your life is your life. Own to lead, your choices are your own to make, and your dignity is not subject to the inspection of a committee. Your body is your own sacred private sanctuary, a fortress of skin and bone that belongs only to you. And no lawyer, priest, or king stands behind your curtains tonight to demand any proof of your worth, your purity, or your human value. Let the somber, heavy weight of their ancient, documented struggle make your own bed feel even more like a fortress of absolute, unshakable freedom. The heavy, dusty wool of the past cannot smother you. It can only act as a soft, distant contrast to the wonderful, rhythmic, and effortless lightness of your own steady, peaceful breath. Focus now on the sound of the wind outside your own modern window, a sound that has not changed in 1,000 years, yet sounds so different tonight. In the year 1350, that same wind whistled through the jagged, cold stone gargoyles of this very manor, carrying the same cold nighttime air, but back then it carried a very different, very heavy set of human fears. Imagine those ancient fears now as tiny, dying sparks of a campfire that are being slowly, gently, and systematically extinguished, one by one, by the rising, cool and silent mist of time. Shh! The shame is gone. The ancient blood has dried and faded into the invisible dust of the earth many centuries ago. The spotless maid and the morning gift are now nothing more than forgotten, meaningless words in a dusty, heavy book in a locked library that no one alive needs to read, obey, or fear ever again. The struggle is over. The debt is paid in full. And the people in the story are finally resting in the deep, cool earth. The fire in the medieval hearth has now turned almost entirely to silent, powdery gray ash, with only a single, tiny and lonely ember pulsing deep in the very center, a small, orange eye watching the quiet room as the shadows grow long. The young couple in our story has finally found a moment of exhausted, heavy, and dreamless sleep, draped in thick furs, and into the lingering sweet and cooling scent of dying herbs that rose from the floor hours ago. They have survived the deafening noise of the feast, the terrifying chaos of the procession, and the crushing weight of the priest's heavy Latin blessing. They have navigated the terrifying silent requirements of the law and the expectations of their ancient bloodlines. But even in their deepest sleep, even in the darkest, coldest part of the night when the village is perfectly silent and the cold, distant stars are the only witnesses left in the sky, they are still bound by the invisible threads of their time. In the Middle Ages, even the most private of moments, even the quietest, most desperate thoughts whispered into a heavy pillow in the dead of night were dictated by a higher, watchful power that never truly slept. The law of the earth, the silver, and the contracts is finished for the night, but the law of the spirit is just beginning to stir in the deep, velvet shadows of the room. The silence is not empty. It is a presence, a weight that settles over the bed like a heavy protective cloak of peace. But for you, the listener, that weight is a profound comfort. It is the weight of a story that is coming to its natural, peaceful, and inevitable end. It is the weight of a long journey that has finally reached its destination. Every word I speak is a single drop of water falling into a deep, perfectly still well, rippling outward in perfect circles, until the surface is once again smooth and glassy. You are drifting now, floating on the surface of a history that is as deep as the ocean and as quiet as a forgotten grave. The blood, the shame, the silver, the goats, and the land, it is all melting into a single, indistinct, and comforting hum of time. The bed is your boat, the soft, clean sheets are your sails, and the story is the gentle, rising tide, pulling you further and further away from the bright, noisy, and exhausting shore of the waking world. You are almost there, at the very edge of sleep. The final ritual is approaching, the one that requires no witnesses, no lawyers, no parchment, and no physical proof. It is the ritual of the final, total, and peaceful surrender to the welcoming dark of the night. Every breath you take is slower and deeper than the last. Every thought is softer and more blurred, like ink running on damp parchment. The world of 1350 is fading into a mist of gold, gray, and shadow, leaving you alone in the perfect, silent, and eternal peace of the present moment. Sleep now, for the history is written, the witnesses have left the hall, and the night is yours alone to keep. The sheets are cool, the room is still, and the story has whispered itself to sleep. The small, flickering candle has finally met the pooling, golden, and translucent wax, and the entire room is plunged into a deep, velvety indigo that feels heavy and cool against your closed eyes. We are entering now the seventh stage of our long historical night, a rhythmic and peaceful return to the absolute safety of the church's vast, sheltering shadow. As the physical and stressful proof of the bedchamber fades into the dark, distant background of memory, we find ourselves once again wrapped in the immense, structural embrace of medieval religious order. In the mid-14th century, the church was not merely a building of cold stone, or a distant set of abstract beliefs. It was a vast, invisible, and all-encompassing architecture that dictated the very pulse, breath, and rhythm of human intimacy. For some, this was a heavy burden, but for many others, it was a profound and necessary source of structure and boundaries, a protective, high fence built carefully around the chaotic, unpredictable, and often frightening nature of human desire. As you lie there in your own bed, let the thought of these ancient, unbreakable, and sacred rules act as a steady hypnotic pulse, grounding you in the absolute and unwavering certainty of the long-forgotten past. The first, thick layer of this religious protection was the fascinating and rigid concept of the forbidden days. Imagine a medieval world where the calendar itself was not just a tool for counting days, but a sacred map of restraint, devotion, and holy timing. The Church dictated that there were vast, quiet, and reflective stretches of time where intimacy was strictly and legally prohibited, creating a slow, predictable, and comforting cycle of on and off periods that every soul in the village understood without question. There was to be absolutely no intimacy on Sundays, the holy day of the Lord. There was to be no intimacy on Wednesdays, the somber day remembered for Christ's betrayal. And there was to be no intimacy on Fridays, the dark day of the crucifixion. When you add to this the long, weary, and somber weeks of Lent, the expectant, quiet weeks of Advent before the birth of the child, and the numerous, colorful feast days of the many local saints, you begin to realize that nearly half of the entire calendar year was set aside for a quiet, spiritual, and communal celibacy. This was not experienced as a simple denial or a cruel punishment. It was a shared communal rhythm that synchronized the heartbeats of the entire population. There is a strange, hypnotic, and deep comfort in this realization, the idea that the entire medieval world, from the powerful king sitting on his high golden throne in the castle, to the humblest peasant sleeping on a bed of straw in an earthen hut, was following the same silent, holy, and predictable schedule. The boundaries were remarkably clear. The expectations were set in unyielding stone. You did not have to decide for yourself. You did not have to negotiate or wonder. The Church had already decided everything for you, effectively removing the heavy, exhausting weight of choice and individual will from your tired, resting mind. Within these forbidden days, the Church's watchful and paternal gaze extended even further, reaching deep into the very specifics of the human act itself. This brings us to the famous and incredibly detailed medieval penitentials, the long, dense, and almost mathematical lists of sinful positions, prohibited behaviors, and the precise spiritual costs of each. The Church held a very specific, functional, and almost mechanical view of human intimacy. It was designed primarily for the procreation of children to labor in the fields and the humble. Anything that veered too far into the realm of excessive wild pleasure or untamed, selfish lust was viewed with a suspicious, legalistic, and watchful eye that never truly closed, even in the middle of the night. Imagine a solitary monk in a cold, silent stone cell, his quill scratching rhythmically against a piece of dry, yellowed parchment. He is writing out a long list of penances for every possible deviation from the path. If a couple strayed from the natural way, the only position sanctioned by the high heavens and the ancient fathers, they might find themselves facing a harsh but orderly penance of 40 long days on a strict, humbling diet of nothing but plain bread and cool water. To our modern restless ears, this sounds like an unthinkable and invasive intrusion into the most private of human spaces. But in the 14th century, these rules provided a deep, satisfying sense of cosmic order and safety. People truly believed that misordered intimacy or forbidden desires could lead to the direct birth of monsters, the curdling of the summer crops, the death of livestock, or the bringing of a devastating plague upon the entire village. By following the natural, sanctioned positions, they believed without all their hearts that they were keeping the entire world and the heavens above in a delicate and beautiful balance. There is a deep, intellectual stillness to be found in this historical realization, the idea that even your most private, hidden movements were part of a grand, celestial, and divine harmony. Everything had its proper place. Everything had its proper form. Everything was watched over by a power that cared for the order of the universe. Let that sense of order settle over you now, like a heavy, warm, and protective cloak, shielding you from the chaos of the modern world. But here, deep in the shadows of the medieval law, lies a profound and hidden historical reveal, a secret mercy, tucked carefully within the rigid, cold folds of the religious law. While these rules seem incredibly restrictive and even oppressive to our modern sensibilities, the Church actually acted as a powerful, divine, and undeniable protector for many medieval women. In a world where a woman had almost no legal standing, no voice in the courts, and very little personal autonomy over her own life, the Church's forbidden days and its strict rules on the nature of sin gave her a powerful, unshakable, and sacred excuse to say no. If a woman was exhausted from the long hours of labor in the fields, if she was ill from the winter damp, or if she was simply unwilling to be touched on a particular night, she could invoke the absolute sanctity of a Wednesday, a Friday, or a holy feast day. No husband, no matter how powerful, wealthy, or aggressive he might be, dared to overrule the established laws of God for fear of the very real and terrifying prospect of eternal damnation and the fires of hell. The Church provided a sacred boundary, a divine no, that protected the female body from the unrelenting, daily, and often harsh demands of the domestic contract. The sin was not hers to carry. It was the heavy shield she used to defend her own peace and her own body. It was perhaps the only place in the entire medieval world where a woman's refusal carried the absolute, staggering weight of heaven itself behind it. As you contemplate these ancient, sturdy boundaries in the silence of your room, I want you to feel the profound safety of the fence that surrounds you. A fence is not just a barrier meant to keep you in. It is a clear, protective definition of your own sacred space. It tells you exactly where you are safe. It tells you what belongs only to you. The rules of the medieval Church were like a high, ancient stone wall built around a quiet, sun-drenched garden. Inside that garden, there was order, there was predictable peace, and there was a clear, narrow, and well-worn path to follow. You do not have to worry about the vast, terrifying, and chaotic unknown of the dark forest that lies just outside the wall. You are safely within the boundaries of the story, protected by the same immense structure that held 1,000 years of human history together in one piece. Let the slow, rhythmic pulse of these rules, the Sundays, the Wednesdays, the bread, and the cool water act like a steady, muffled, and hypnotic drumbeat for your resting mind. Sunday, rest. Wednesday, quiet. Friday, reflection. It is a cycle that never changes, a great wheel that never stops turning with the seasons. It is a machine of faith that never breaks down. Feel the weight of this religious structure settling over your chest and your heavy limbs, much like the thick, hand-woven wool blankets of the bedchamber. It is not a weight that crushes your spirit or your breath. It is a weight that anchors your drifting soul to the solid earth. It keeps you from floating away into the chaotic, uncertain, and frightening spaces of your own nighttime thoughts. You are safe within the order of the law. You are safe within the long, cooling shadow of the Church. The village outside the manor walls is now completely and utterly silent, the only sound being the distant, rhythmic, and lonely tolling of a monastery bell calling the monks to the midnight prayers of matins. The monks are waking up now in their cold, silent dormitories, their soft, chanting voices rising like thin columns of blue smoke into the freezing night air. They are praying for the entire world, praying for the souls of the couple in the bedchamber, and praying for the eternal stability of the divine order they serve with every breath. Their voices are a constant, low, vibrating, and comforting hum in the background of history, a sound that whispers to the night, everything is being watched over. Everything is exactly as it should be. Sleep now, for the world is in good hands. Focus your mind on that imaginary bell in the far distance. Feel its low, deep vibration in the air around you, a pulsing thrum that resonates perfectly with the slow rhythm of your own heartbeat. Every toll of the bell is a reminder that the world has a structure, that the night has a holy and quiet purpose, and that the boundaries of your own life are secure, unbroken, and guarded. You are not floating in a dark, empty void. You are resting in a sturdy, ancient cradle of history, held by the same invisible, powerful hands that guided the medieval world through its darkest and most turbulent centuries. The shadows on your wall are not monsters. They are the graceful, sheltering stone arches of a cathedral, protecting you from the cold wind and the driving rain of the outside world. But as the sound of the bell fades into the rising mist, and the monks return to their silent wooden cells, a final soft thought begins to drift through the silence of the room like a falling leaf. We have spent the entire night in the stone manors and the high-timbered halls of the wealthy, the noble, and the powerful. We have looked at the contracts of silver, the deeds of land, and the sheets of fine, embroidered linen. But what of those who lived outside the high defensive walls of the castle? What of the millions of souls who lived in the simple, earthen cottages, where there were no lawyers hiding behind the curtains and no silver coins to be found in the purse? Their story is the final, most essential, and most grounding layer of the night, the one that brings us back to the very warmth and smell of the earth itself. The transition is beginning now, moving slowly from the cold, grand stone of the church porch to the warm, dark, and smoky air of the peasant's humble cottage. The final ritual of the night is waiting for us in the simplest, most honest of places. The air is becoming softer now, warmer and more humid against your skin. The sharp, medicinal smell of the manor's herbs is fading away, slowly replaced by the grounding scent of wood smoke, damp straw, and the soft breath of livestock. We are leaving the world of the safe and moving toward the world of the essential. Every word I speak is a slow, heavy step down from the high, cold altar, down into the soft, dark mud of the village lane. You are walking slowly toward the very end of the night, toward the final, total, and blissful surrender. Breathe in the thick smoke of the distant cottage fire, and let the stone walls of the manor dissolve into the rising mist of the fields. Aye, howdy. The final story is about to begin, and it is the quietest, most peaceful one of all. You are almost home. You are almost asleep. Every breath is a return to the roots of the world. The air has grown thick and heavy with the grounding primal scent of damp earth, curling wood smoke, and the sweet, lingering musk of sun-dried straw. We have traveled far, very far indeed, from the cold, echoing stones of the manor and the high, vaulted, and intimidating ceilings of the great cathedral, leaving behind the silver contracts, the clinking coins, and the watchful, calculating eyes of the lawyers. We are moving now into the eighth and final stage of our long atmospheric journey, the peasant's truth. This is the moment of ultimate, stripped-back simplicity, where the grand, noisy drama of medieval history finally dissolves into the quiet, pulsing, and honest heart of a single, humble room. As you lie there in your own bed, feel the cognitive load of the entire night lifting away like a mist, replaced by a sense of deep, elemental peace that has existed since the very first fire was lit in a human heart. Imagine a small, low-ceilinged cottage nestled in the soft, protective curve of a silent valley. The walls here are not made of cold, cut stone, but of wattle and daub-pliant woven branches and packed, sun-dried earth that breathe in rhythm with the changing seasons. Above you, the roof is a thick, shaggy, and protective layer of golden thatch, and the floor beneath is the very soil of the village itself, packed hard, cool, and smooth by the passage of generations of feet. In the corner of this dim, warm space, there is no high-timbered bed with heavy embroidered curtains. There is only a simple, generous, and fragrant mattress of fresh golden straw, covered by a heavy, hand-woven wool blanket that still carries the faint, comforting smell of the sheep that graze on the nearby misty hills. Outside the small, wooden-shuttered window, the only sound in the world is the rhythmic, hypnotic, and steady chirping of crickets in the tall grass and the occasional, very soft lowing of a cow in the lean-to next door. The world has become small, manageable, and profoundly, beautifully quiet. In these humble cottages, the commoners of the 14th century often bypass the intense, legalistic, and exhausting drama of the nobility altogether. While the kings and dukes fretted and paced over bloodlines, alliances, and dowries of shimmering gold, the peasants found a much more human, much more tangible connection in the quiet cracks of their arranged lives. For them, a marriage was not a grand geopolitical merger. It was a partnership of daily survival, a simple joining of hands to plow the heavy fields and bake the dark bread. Because there was no silver to lose and no titles to defend with iron, there was often more room for a quiet, budding affection to grow like a wild flower in the shade. They did not need lawyers hiding behind curtains or priests with swaying censers to prove the validity of their union to the world. They had the shared labor of the day and the shared flickering warmth of the fire at night. As you breathe in the cooling, clean air of your own room, let the reveal of this simpler, more honest truth settle over your mind like a soft falling mist. In a world defined by rigid rules and ironclad contracts, love genuine, quiet, and unrecorded, love often grew in the most unlikely and humble of places. It grew between two people who spent their long days sowing wheat together under the sun and their quiet nights sharing a single wooden bowl of pottage by the hearth. It was a love built on the shared ancient rhythm of the seasons, the shared weary joy of a good harvest, and the shared profound silence of a long winter evening. History rarely remembers their names, and no formal quill ever recorded their whispered words in the dark, but their peace was more real, more lasting, and more vital than any legal document ever signed in a cold stone palace. They lived in the essential, in the raw, unadorned beauty of a life stripped of all pretense. Feel the texture of the story shifting now, becoming softer, more blurred, and more distant at the edges. The straw on the cottage floor is soft and yielding, molding itself perfectly to the weight of the tired, honest bodies it holds in its embrace. The small, modest fire in the center of the room is dying down now, the orange flames retreating slowly into a thick bed of soft, pulsing, and warm gray ash. The world is becoming smaller and smaller, with every passing second, narrowing down until it is only the size of your own gentle breath and the steady, quiet beat of your own heart. The grand, clanking machinery of the 14th century has finally ground to a complete and total halt. The silver has been spent, the wheat has been harvested and stored, and the long prayers have all been said. There is nothing left to do, nothing left to prove, and nowhere left to go but into the dream. The crickets outside are slowing their sharp rhythm, matching the slow, steady, and effortless pace of your own breathing. The night air is cool against your skin, but the thick blanket of history is warm, heavy, and protective over your limbs. You are safe in the simplest, most fundamental version of the story, where the only requirement is to exist and to rest your weary head. The cognitive load of the day, the modern worries, the complex plans, and the tangled webs of your daily life is dissolving now, floating up into the dark, smoky rafters of the cottage and vanishing into the night. You are returning to the essential truth of the human experience, that after the labor is done, after the ritual is finished, and after the law has been satisfied, there is only the healing silence of the night and the deep, restorative peace of the ancient earth. This night, like all nights in the long, winding, and infinite history of the world, must finally come to a close. The sun will eventually rise over the medieval valley, touching the thatch with gold, and it will eventually rise outside your own window. But that is a world away, a time that does not yet exist. For now, in this moment, there is only the dark, the warmth, and the absolute unshakable stillness. Every word I speak is becoming a faint whisper, a fading echo in the deep, cool well of time. You are drifting now, floating on a sea of soft, fragrant straw and cooling, glowing embers. The transition is complete. The story has done its work. The peasant's truth is now your truth, that you are held, you are safe, and you are allowed to let go of everything. The very last ember in the humble cottage hearth gives one final, tiny, and brave spark before turning to silent, cool gray. The crickets have fallen entirely silent. The wind has stopped its whistling through the eaves. The history of the year 1350 has whispered its final, deepest secret and pulled the heavy covers up over its head. You are no longer a ghost in the rafters. You are a sleeper in the present, wrapped in the eternal, unblinking peace of a night that knows no time, no law, and no burden. Sleep now, for the long journey is over. The earth is still. The night is complete. The silence is your home. As the last traces of the cottage fire fade into a soft, velvety, and welcomous, the very air in the room seems to settle and solidify, becoming thick with the profound, unshakable stillness of the deep night. We are drifting now into the final silent reaches of the peasant's truth, where even the simplest, smallest thoughts are beginning to dissolve like grains of salt in deep water. The heavy wool of your blankets feels like the softest, thickest moss, and the mattress beneath you is as sturdy and reliable as the ancient living soil itself. You are no longer an observer of a distant history. You have become a part of its quietest, most peaceful, and most enduring rhythm, the rhythmic, eternal ebb and flow of the human soul at absolute rest. In these humble, earthen homes, the night was a sacred space of total and perfect equality. In the dark, there is no longer any difference between the powerful lord in his stone castle and the weary worker in the mud-walled field. Both were subject to the same cooling air, the same heavy biological need for sleep, and the same mysterious, drifting dreams that dance in the deep shadows of the mind. This is the ultimate comfort of our history, the realization that the most essential, most vital parts of our lives, the need for warmth, the need for safety, and the need for a quiet, dark place to lay our heads, have never changed in 1,000 years. You are resting in an unbroken chain of peace that stretches back through 1,000 years of nights just like this one, a lineage of silence that protects you. The sounds of the medieval world have completely and utterly vanished. The iron latch is still and cold. The priest's heavy censer is silent. The lawyers have long since folded their dry parchments and gone to their own quiet beds in the dark. Even the crickets have tucked their wings away, leaving the entire valley in a state of absolute, crystalline, and perfect silence. The only thing that remains in the universe is the slow, steady, and deep vibration of the earth itself, a low, comforting hum that you can feel in your very bones and your very soul. This is the sound of time moving on, a gentle rising tide that carries you further and further away from the bright, noisy, and exhausting shore of the waking day. Let your mind become like a dark, perfectly still pool of water in a hidden cave. No ripples, no reflections, no movement, just a deep, dark, and peaceful clarity. Every memory of the silver contracts, the church porch, the shouting guests, and the chaotic feast is now nothing more than a faint golden dust settling slowly at the very bottom of the pool. The complexity of the 14th century has served its noble purpose. It has led you here to this exact moment of total, simplified, and beautiful existence. You are safe. You are held by time. You are home. The story is over. The book is closed and placed on the shelf. The candle is out and the smoke has cleared. The only thing left in the room is the dark, and the dark is a kind and ancient friend. It is a soft, heavy cloak that shields you from the eyes of the world. It is the warm womb of history where everything is forgiven, everything is forgotten, and everything is at peace. Breathe in the thick silence. Breathe out the last, lingering shadows of the day. You are almost there, at the very center of the night, where the past and the present meet in a single, perfect, and unmoving point of rest. This night, like every night that has ever come before it, ends in the same beautiful and necessary surrender. The transition is finished. The drift has reached its final destination. Sleep now, child of history. Sleep now, and let the great world turn without you. The morning is 1,000 years away, hidden behind the curve of the earth. Tonight, there is only the straw, the shadows, the warmth of the wool, and the eternal quiet peace of the earth beneath you. Every breath is a whisper of the soil. Every heartbeat is a step deeper into the dark. The journey is complete. You are home. You are asleep. The air in the small, low-ceilinged, thatch-roofed cottage has grown incredibly still and heavy, thick with the intoxicating sweet scent of dying wood smoke, the cooling, damp musk of the ancient earth, and the faint, lingering perfume of dried meadowsweet. We are drifting now, slowly and effortlessly, into the 9th and final layer of our long journey. The Untold Secrets. This is a hidden, viral loop, a lingering and haunting mystery that remains long after the legal parchment has yellowed into dust and the massive castle stones have crumbled under the weight of time. As you lie there in this very moment, perfectly suspended between the fading waking world and the deep, velvet, and absolute embrace of sleep, feel the weight of these unrecorded stories settling over your limbs like a fine, golden mist. These are the whispers that history, in its loud, masculine, and documented arrogance, completely failed to capture, the private secrets that were never meant for the sharp eyes of the lawyers or the judgmental, cold ears of the village priests. Imagine, if you will, the small, weather-worn, and leather-bound secret books that were never once placed on a formal library shelf. They were not written in the stiff, formal Latin of the scholars or the monks, but in the soft, rhythmic heart language of mothers, passed secretly from hand to hand, from mother to daughter, in the hushed, deeply shadowed corners of the communal spinning room. These were the forbidden books of the wise women, containing the deep, practical knowledge that the official, rigid records of the 14th century tried so desperately and so unsuccessfully to suppress. While the men in the great drafty halls were loudly debating the fluctuating price of silver and the hard boundaries of land, the women were quietly, steadily documenting a very different kind of power. They were recording the hidden magical properties of the deep forest, the exact sacred moment to harvest the wild rue, the soothing, numbing power of the dried poppy head, and the protective, cooling strength of the yarrow root. In the deep, lightless, and silent hours of the medieval night, the humble cottage became a secret laboratory of whispered spells and potent herbal concoctions. Imagine a woman standing alone over a small, bubbling ceramic pot, her weary face lit only by the low, orange, and pulsing glow of the remaining embers. She is not just cooking a simple meal. She is weaving a spiritual and physical defense for her daughters. She whispers ancient, melodic rhymes to the rising steam, words that were already old long before the first stone of the church was ever laid. These were sacred spells for protection charms to ward off the terrifying night terrors, to ensure a safe and healthy birth in the dark, or to silently firmly reclaim a sense of agency in a world that offered them none. They used the sharp scent of mint to clear the cluttered mind, the earthy mugwort to bring prophetic and guiding dreams, and the tiny hidden seeds of the forest to control the very timing and rhythm of their own lives. These were the invisible, unbreakable threads that held the feminine world together, a secret, underground network of support that completely bypassed the heavy, ironclad, and unyielding laws of the state. This is the profound, lingering reveal of our entire journey. Official history only recorded the men's rules, the men's cold contracts, and the men's noisy victories. But in the tiny, narrow cracks of that rigid and brittle structure, women were writing their own secret, vibrant history, one that was whispered softly rather than written in ink, felt deeply in the blood rather than forced by the hand. While the dusty official documents tell us only of the spotless maid and the conjugal debt, the secret books tell us of incredible resilience, of ancient herbal wisdom, and of a quiet, unshakable sisterhood that existed beneath the surface of every single village lane. They knew that the proof on the white linen sheets was often a carefully constructed performance, and they knew exactly how to stage it to perfection. They knew that the forbidden days of the church were a powerful shield, and they knew exactly how to use that shield to protect their own bodies. They were the silent, invisible architects of their own survival, the keepers of a deep truth that no king or bishop could ever truly own, control, or understand. As you breathe in the cooling, rhythmic night air of your own room, let these ancient secrets become a physical part of you. You are not just a passive listener at the end of a story. You are now a guardian of this hidden, sacred lineage. These stories do not require a public trial, a legal witness, or a signed document to be real and powerful. They are safe now, tucked away in the deepest, most quiet shadows of the night, where the harsh, artificial light of the modern world cannot ever reach them. They are part of the ancient, steady rhythm of your own pulse, a reminder that there is always a secret, soft world beneath the one we see, a world of intuition, of nature, and of quiet, enduring strength. You do not need to remember every detail. You only need to feel the profound comfort of their existence. The night is reaching its absolute, crystalline peak of stillness now. The crickets in the grass have long since tucked their wings into the darkness, and the wind has completely abandoned its whistling among the thatched eaves. The small orange eye of the cottage hearth has closed for the final, weary time, leaving only the pure, indigo peace of the total dark. The secrets of the year 1350 are no longer a heavy burden to carry. They are a soft, heavy, and warm blanket that keeps you safe against the chill of the unknown world. They are the untold, and in their deep silence, there is a total and perfect sense of freedom. You have seen the grand feast. You have heard the rhythmic prayers, and you have witnessed the heavy contracts. But now, in the end, you possess the only truth that was never meant to be told. Feel your body becoming as light and as ethereal as the thin smoke that once rose to the dark rafters. Every modern worry, every noisy, distracting thought, and every sharp, jagged memory is dissolving effortlessly into this ancient, mysterious, and welcoming dark. You are drifting now on a vast sea of whispers, a gentle and infinite ocean of stories that have no beginning and no end. The loop of the night is complete, but the mystery remains, inviting you to return, to listen again, and to sink even deeper into the soft golden dust of the past. There is always more to find in the long shadows, always another secret waiting to be whispered into the ear of a peaceful sleeper. The sun will eventually rise soon, touching the top of the Coldstone Manor and the weathered thatched roof of the cottage with its first thin fingers of light. But for now, in this sacred, pressurized, and silent moment, there is only the dark. There is only the absolute silence. There is only the deep, restorative, and eternal peace of a history that has finally found its rest in the earth. The transition from the loud world of men to the quiet world of secrets is finished. You are home in the very heart of the mystery. You are at peace. You are exactly where you belong. The secrets are safe with the night. The night is long and kind. Sleep now, for you are the final witness to the untold. The story is sleeping. The earth is still. The silence is yours. The candles have all burnt down to stubs now, their golden light long since swallowed by the vast patient and cooling velvet of the deep dark. The thick, molten wax has finally cooled and hardened into strange, frozen, and ivory shapes upon the bedside stool, as cold and silent as the ancient stones of the manor itself. There is no more flickering, no more dancing of shadows, only the absolute and perfect clarity of the deep night. We have reached the 10th and final stage of our long atmospheric journey together, the ashes of time. This is the moment of total, blissful, and heavy surrender, where the weight of the 14th century and the sharp noise of the modern world both dissolve into a single, shimmering, and distant point of peace. As you lie there in your own bed, feel the very last remnants of the story turning to soft, weightless ash, drifting away into the cool, silent air of your room. The history of the human heart is a history of immense, quiet, and profound resilience that spans across the thousands of years that lie between us. We have walked through the loud, chaotic feasts. We have felt the cold pressure of the legal contracts, and we have whispered the secrets of the herbal books in the dark. Through every age, the human heart has sought the same essential things: a moment of warmth, a sense of safety, and the quiet dignity of a night without fear. Those who lived in 1350 carried burdens we can barely imagine: the weight of empires, the shadow of the plague, and the rigid, unyielding laws of the spirit. Yet they survived, they loved, and they found their way to the same sleep that is calling to you now. Their resilience is the very soil upon which your own life is built, a steady and ancient foundation that will never give way beneath you. And here is the final, beautiful, and deeply moving reveal of our long walk through the past. You are the living, breathing, and peaceful continuation of their story. You are the dream they had in the dark, drafty corners of their cottages and their castles. As you lie in the incredible modern comfort of your bed, with its soft, clean linens, its predictable warmth, and its absolute security, you are experiencing the peace that they could only catch in fleeting, stolen moments of silence. You are the culmination of their long endurance, the quiet harbor at the end of their stormy sea. The comfort you feel right now is a gift from the centuries, a soft reward for all the struggles that came before. You are safe in a way they never were, and your rest is the final, most perfect chapter of their unfinished history. The world of the 14th century is drifting away now, becoming a faint, golden, and indistinct blur at the very edge of your mind. The village is silent. The monastery bell has stopped its rhythmic tolling. The lawyers, the priests, the kings, and the weary peasants have all laid down their heavy burdens and found their eternal rest in the cool earth. There is nothing left to explore, nothing left to explain, and no more secrets to whisper. The machinery of time has slowed to a rhythmic, almost imperceptible crawl, matching the deep, effortless, and steady rise and fall of your own chest. You are sinking, slowly and weightlessly, into a sea of absolute crystalline darkness where no thought can follow. Breathe in the silence. Breathe out the last traces of the day. Your limbs are heavy as the ancient, weathered oak of the manor doors, pinned to the mattress by the gentle, cooling gravity of history. Your mind is as still and as clear as the water in a deep, forgotten well, reflecting nothing but the quiet, indigo peace of the night. Every muscle is letting go. Every nerve is cooling, and every memory is fading into a soft, gray, and comforting mist. There is no tomorrow yet, and there is no yesterday left. There is only this bed, this slow breath, and this perfect, unblinking dark. You have done enough. You have traveled far enough. You are home. The ashes of time are soft, fine, and warm, covering the embers of the story until the very last spark is gone. The night is no longer a place of transit. It is a place of final arrival. You have reached the center of the labyrinth, and you have found that it is a place of total welcoming silence. The voice you hear is becoming a part of the wind, a part of the soft shadows, until it is no longer a sound, but a feeling of absolute safety that wraps around you like a heavy, protective cloak of velvet. You are the master of this dark. You are the owner of this peace. You are the stillness at the heart of the world. The long, winding path through the manor and the cottage has reached its end. The heavy silver coins have been put away. The embroidered sheets have been folded into the dark. The spells have been whispered, and the prayers have been answered. There is no more ink on the parchment and no more fire in the grate. The 14th century is sleeping now, tucked away into the deep soil of the past, leaving you to your own quiet and undisturbed rest. The stars above the old valley are the same stars above your head, watching over you with an ancient and unblinking kindness. They see you, they know your peace, and they bless your sleep. Sleep now, child of the ages. The history is written. The witnesses have all gone home to their rest. The night is yours, and yours alone. Every breath you take is a surrender to the dark. Every heartbeat is a slow rhythm of peace. The journey is complete, and the world is still. The story has dissolved into the air, leaving only the silence. The silence is your sanctuary. The silence is your sleep. The ashes are cold, and the night is deep. Rest in the stillness. Rest in the safety. Rest in the dark. Sleep, sleep, sleep. The small flickering candle has finally met the pooling, golden, and translucent wax, and the entire room is plunged into a deep, velvety indigo that feels heavy and cool against your closed eyes. We are entering now the 11th stage of our long historical night, a rhythmic and peaceful descent into the absolute safety of the Holy Restraint. As the physical and often stressful proof of the bedchamber fades into the dark, distant background of memory, we find ourselves once again wrapped in the immense, structural, and disciplined embrace of medieval religious order. In the mid-14th century, the church was not merely a building of cold stone or a distant set of abstract beliefs. It was a vast, invisible, and all-encompassing architecture that dictated the very pulse, breath, and rhythm of human intimacy. For some, this was a heavy and constant burden, but for many others, it was a profound and necessary source of structure and boundaries, a protective, high fence built carefully around the chaotic, unpredictable, and often frightening nature of human desire. As you lie there in your own bed, let the thought of these ancient, unbreakable, and sacred rules act as a steady hypnotic pulse, grounding you in the absolute and unwavering certainty of the long-forgotten past. In the intricate, rigid, and often terrifying medieval mind, the church effectively collected what we might call the taxes of the flesh. Imagine a world where the authorities did not just own your land or your harvest, but claimed a spiritual ownership over the very privacy of your bedroom. To the medieval peasant and noble alike, the act of love was not a free expression of the self. It was a regulated duty, a conjugal debt that had to be paid according to a strict and divine ledger. This was the ultimate form of discipline, a world where the most intimate moments were measured by the shadow of the cathedral. The bedroom was not an island. It was a small chapel of the state, where every movement was observed by an invisible celestial judge. This gaze was constant, reaching through the thick stone walls and the heavy embroidered curtains, ensuring that even in the deepest dark, the rules of the spirit were never forgotten. The first, thick layer of this religious protection was the fascinating and rigid concept of the forbidden days. Imagine a medieval world where the calendar itself was not just a tool for counting days, but a sacred map of restraint, devotion, and holy timing. The church dictated that there were vast, quiet, and reflective stretches of time where intimacy was strictly and legally prohibited, creating a slow, predictable, and comforting cycle of on and off periods that every soul in the village understood without question. There was to be absolutely no intimacy on Sundays, the holy day of the Lord. There was to be no intimacy on Wednesdays, the somber day remembered for Christ's betrayal. And there was to be no intimacy on Fridays, the dark day of the crucifixion. When you add to this the long, weary, and somber weeks of Lent, the expectant, quiet weeks of Advent before the birth of the child, and the numerous, colorful feast days of the many local saints, you begin to realize a staggering, heavy truth. The Church strictly forbade intimacy on over 150 days of every single year. Nearly half of the entire calendar was set aside for a quiet, spiritual, and communal celibacy. This was not experienced as a simple denial or a cruel punishment. It was a shared communal rhythm that synchronized the heartbeats of the entire population. There is a strange, hypnotic, and deep comfort in this realization. The idea that the entire medieval world, from the powerful king sitting on his high golden throne in the castle, to the humblest peasant sleeping on a bed of straw in an earthen hut, was following the same silent, holy, and predictable schedule. The boundaries were remarkably clear. The expectations were set in unyielding stone. You did not have to decide for yourself. You did not have to negotiate or wonder. The Church had already decided everything for you, effectively removing the heavy, exhausting weight of choice and individual will from your tired, resting mind. Within these forbidden days, the Church's watchful and paternal gaze extended even further, reaching deep into the very specifics of the human act itself. This brings us to the famous and incredibly detailed medieval penitentials, the long, dense, and almost mathematical lists of sinful positions, prohibited behaviors, and the precise spiritual costs of each. These lists were often visualized as trees of sin, where every branch represented a different deviation from the path of purity. The Church held a very specific, functional, and almost mechanical view of human intimacy. It was designed primarily for the procreation of children, to labor in the fields, and the humble, necessary payment of the conjugal debt between spouses. Anything that veered too far into the realm of excessive, wild pleasure or untamed, selfish overenjoyment was viewed with a suspicious, legalistic, and watchful eye that never truly closed. Imagine a solitary monk in a cold, silent stone cell, his quill scratching rhythmically against a piece of dry, yellowed parchment. He is writing out a long list of penances for every possible deviation. If a couple strayed from the natural way, the only position sanctioned by the high heavens and the ancient fathers, they might find themselves facing a harsh but orderly penance of 40 long days on a strict, humbling diet of nothing but plain bread and cool water. If they were deemed to have sought too much delight in the act, the penance could involve months of public prayer or the wearing of rough hair shirts. To our modern, restless ears, this sounds like an unthinkable and invasive intrusion into the most private of human spaces. But in the 14th century, these rules provided a deep, satisfying sense of cosmic order and safety. People truly believed that misordered intimacy or forbidden desires could lead to the direct birth of monsters, the curdling of the summer crops, the death of livestock, or the bringing of a devastating plague upon the entire village. By following the natural sanctioned positions, they believed with all their hearts that they were keeping the entire world, and the heavens above, in a delicate and beautiful balance. There is a deep intellectual stillness to be found in this historical realization, the idea that even your most private, hidden movements were part of a grand, celestial, and divine harmony. Everything had its proper place. Everything had its proper form. Everything was watched over by a power that cared for the order of the universe. Imagine the silence of a great stone monastery at midnight. It is a place that is cold, structured, and oddly, profoundly peaceful. The air there is thin and clean, smelling of old parchment, and the faint, lingering scent of frankincense. In that silence, there is no chaos, no confusion, and no doubt. The rules are the walls, and the walls are the safety. As you lie there, let that sense of monastic order settle over you now, like a heavy, warm, and protective cloak, shielding you from the noise and the frantic energy of the modern world. You are tucked away in a corner of history where the path is narrow but clear, where the laws are heavy but certain. The village outside the manor walls is now completely and utterly silent, the only sound being the distant, rhythmic, and lonely tolling of a monastery bell calling the monks to their prayers. The monks are waking up now in their cold, silent dormitories, their soft, chanting voices rising like thin columns of blue smoke into the freezing night air. They are praying for the entire world, praying for the stability of the divine order they serve with every breath. Their voices are a constant low, vibrating and comforting hum in the background of history, a sound that whispers to the night, everything is being watched over. Everything is exactly as it should be. Sleep now, for the world is in good hands. The Holy Restraint is a story of a world defined by limits, but within those limits, there was a profound sense of belonging. You were never alone in your discipline. You were part of a vast, synchronized dance of faith and restraint. Every Sunday of rest and every Friday of reflection was a thread in the great tapestry of the year. Let the rhythm of these centuries-old rules, the cycles of Lent, the vigils of the saints, and the simplicity of bread and water act like a slow, steady, and hypnotic drumbeat for your resting mind. It is a cycle that never changes, a great wheel that never stops turning with the seasons. It is a machine of faith that never breaks down. As you contemplate these ancient, sturdy boundaries in the silence of your room, feel the profound safety of the fence that surrounds you. A fence is not just a barrier meant to keep you in. It is a clear, protective definition of your own sacred space. It tells you exactly where you are safe. It tells you what belongs only to you. The rules of the medieval church were like a high, ancient stone wall built around a quiet, sun-drenched garden. Inside that garden, there was order, there was predictable peace, and there was a clear, narrow, and well-worn path to follow. You do not have to worry about the vast, terrifying, and chaotic unknown of the dark forest that lies just outside the wall. You are safely within the boundaries of the story, protected by the same immense structure that held 1,000 years of human history together in one piece. Feel the weight of this religious structure settling over your chest and your heavy limbs, much like the thick, hand-woven wool blankets of the bedchamber. It is not a weight that crushes your spirit or your breath. It is a weight that anchors your drifting soul to the solid earth. It keeps you from floating away into the chaotic, uncertain, and frightening spaces of your own modern nighttime thoughts. You are safe within the order of the law. You are safe within the long, cooling shadow of the church. The shadows on your wall are not monsters. They are the graceful, sheltering stone arches of a cathedral, protecting you from the cold wind and the driving rain of the outside world. Every breath you take is now part of this slow, ancient rhythm. Breathe in the scent of the incense, the cold air of the stone chapel, and the silence of the scriptorium. Breathe out the noise, the choices, and the restlessness of your own time. In the year 1350, the structure of the world was absolute. There was no need to wonder about your purpose or your place. The bells told you when to wake, when to pray, and when to rest. There was a deep, quiet mercy in a certainty. The church provided the architecture of the soul, a framework that held you firm against the storms of life. But as the sound of the bell fades into the rising mist, and the monks return to their silent wooden cells. A final soft thought begins to drift through the silence of the room like a falling leaf. We have explored the walls of stone and the walls of law, the forbidden days and the taxes of the flesh. We have looked at the incredible discipline required to live in the 14th century. But even within these walls of stone and law, the human heart always found subtle, beautiful ways to beat. The rules defined the shape of the world, but the heart provided its warmth. Every breath you take is a testament to that endurance. The transition is beginning now, moving slowly away from the rigid structure toward the final soft surrender of the night. You are walking slowly toward the very end of the journey, toward the total and blissful surrender of sleep. The rules have done their work, and now the silence will do the rest. Sleep now, child of the ages. The history is written, and the night is your sanctuary. The world of law is fading, and the world of dreams is opening its doors. You are safe. You are held. You are home. We are stepping now out of the heavy, cold stone corridors of the manor house and away from the high, echoing vaults of the cathedral, where every single breath was measured by law and every movement was a contract signed in blood and silver. The air changes instantly as we move into the 12th stage of our long journey, the peasant sanctuary. As you lie there, feel the sudden, immense, and cooling relief of leaving the rigid, airless world of the nobility behind. The wind is softer here, smelling of the open fields, the damp river mist, and the honest, grounding scent of woodsmoke. We are walking toward a small, humble cottage nestled in the curve of a quiet valley, a home made not of cut stone and iron, but of the very earth itself. Imagine the texture of this sanctuary as we approach it in the gathering dark. The walls are made of wattle and daub, a sturdy weave of hazel branches packed tight with a mixture of clay, straw, and lime that breathes with the rhythm of the seasons. Above you, the roof is a thick, shaggy, protective canopy of golden brown thatch, where the birds have long since tucked their heads under their wings. There are no grand tapestries here to trap the dust of centuries, and no heavy iron locks to keep out the world. Instead, the floor is covered in a fresh, thick layer of dried rushes and wild meadowsweet, releasing a sweet herbal fragrance as your feet press into the soft, yielding surface. The world has become small, intimate, and profoundly humble. In these earthen homes, the elaborate and terrifying bedding ceremony of the high nobility was transformed into something entirely different, something with much more humor, much more humanity, and far less political pressure. For the peasant couple, there were no lawyers lurking behind the bed curtains with parchment and ink, and no bishops waiting to verify a political alliance. The village community would still gather, yes, but the atmosphere was one of boisterous, earthy celebration rather than cold, calculated observation. There was laughter that shook the rafters, ribald jokes told over wooden mugs of cloudy ale, and a sense of genuine shared joy in the simple union of two people who would work the same soil until their hands grew calloused and gray. The pressure of the spotless maid and the lineage that haunted the castle halls felt like a distant, fading dream in the warmth of the cottage. Here, the focus was not on the preservation of a title or the transfer of a kingdom, but on the practical, essential reality of building a life together. The ceremony was a transition of the heart and the hands, a public acknowledgement that these two souls would now share the same bowl of pottage and the same straw mattress. As you listen to the rhythmic, hypnotic crackle of the small peat fire in the center of the room, feel the immense weight of those noble expectations falling away from your own shoulders. You are safe in the world of the humble, where the only requirement is to belong to the earth and to each other. As the smoke from the peat fire rises in a slow, lazy spiral toward the hole in the thatch, we encounter a profound and surprising reveal, a hidden truth of medieval life that the formal history books often prefer to ignore. In the world of the peasantry, the order of things was often reversed. Because the survival of a family and a village depended entirely on the ability to produce strong hands to work the land, many peasant couples lived together and even had children long before the formal wedding ceremony ever took place in the church porch. This was not seen as a scandal or a sin by the community. It was a practical necessity. A trial marriage allowed a couple to prove their fertility and their compatibility before committing to the lifelong, unbreakable contract of the church. It was a human-centered approach to life, rooted in the raw biological reality of the 14th century. They understood that a marriage without children was a slow death for a farming household, and so they tested the soil before they planted the seed. This reveals a world that was far more flexible, far more pragmatic, and far more forgiving than the rigid laws of the nobility would ever suggest. There is a deep, quiet peace in this realization, the knowledge that beneath the ironclad rules of the era, there was a vast, pulsing heart of common sense and human understanding. Let the sound of the crackling peat fire act as a steady, comforting anchor for your mind. Heat burns slowly, with a low, ancient heat that seeps into the very marrow of your bones. It smells of the deep bog, of ancient moss, and of the secret life of the soil. As the warmth spreads through the small room, notice how the cognitive load of the day, the complex thoughts, the worries of the future, and the echoes of the castle drama begins to melt away. The world is narrowing down to the essential elements: the heat of the fire, the smell of the earth, and the softness of the dried hay in the corner. Everything here is honest. Everything is simple. The wooden bowls on the table, the heavy wool blankets, the iron pot hanging over the cow. Embers. They do not pretend to be anything other than what they are. They have no history to defend and no future to fear. As you breathe in the thick, comforting air of the cottage, feel your own mind adopting this same humble simplicity. You are not a figure of history. You are a person of the earth, resting after a long day of labor in the sun. The straw beneath you is soft and yielding, molding itself to the shape of your body, supporting you with a strength that is as old as the fields themselves. The village outside the cottage walls is perfectly silent now, draped in a thick, protective blanket of night mist. The crickets in the thatch have slowed their song, their rhythmic chirping becoming a faint, distant hum that blends with the sound of your own heartbeat. There are no bells tolling here, no soldiers marching on the ramparts, and no priests chanting in the dark. There is only the long, deep breath of the sleeping valley. Every breath you take is a connection to this silence, a slow and deliberate descent into the dark, fertile soil of sleep. The peasant sanctuary is a place where time does not move in hours or minutes, but in the slow pulse of the seasons and the steady decay of the fire. You are tucked away in a corner of the 14th century that the world has forgotten. A place where the only witness to your existence is the glowing eye of the hearth. There is an immense, heavy safety in being forgotten by history. It means you are free from its judgment. It means you are free from its noise. You can simply exist here in the dark as a part of the natural world. Listen to the slow, rhythmic settling of the thatch above you. It is a sound of a house that is alive, a house that is sheltering its inhabitants from the vastness of the night. The walls of packed earth are thick and warm, holding the heat of the day long after the sun has set. You are wrapped in a cocoon of history that is as soft as wool and as sturdy as oak. There is nothing to decide, nothing to plan, and nothing to worry about. The land is sleeping, the animals are sleeping, and the story is beginning to fold its wings. As the peat fire dies down, turning from a bright orange glow to a deep, pulsing crimson, the faces of those the history books forgot begin to emerge from the shadows. These are the men and women who never wore crowns, who never signed treaties, and who never led armies. They are the ones who plowed the fields, who wove the cloth, and who whispered to their children in the dark. Their lives were small, but they were whole. Their peace was hard won, but it was deep. As you look into the dying embers, feel a profound sense of gratitude for their quiet endurance. Their story is your story, a story of the essential, the humble, and the resilient. The darkness in the cottage is not empty. It is a full, velvety presence that cushions your thoughts and slows your pulse. There is no need for words anymore. The language of the earth is one of silence and steady growth. You can feel the weight of your limbs increasing as you sink deeper into the straw, becoming one with the floor, one with the Wari hills that cradle this valley. The fire is now a low, red eye, watching over you with a gentle, fading warmth. The air is cool on your forehead, carrying the scent of the coming rain and the deep, sleeping woods. Every worry you brought with you from the modern world has been traded for the simple, unshakable certainty of this moment. You are here. You are safe. You are tired. And you are allowed to sleep. The world is large, but your world is small and warm. The history is vast, but your history is just this breath. Every word I speak is now a single falling ember, settling into the gray ash of the night. The cottage is becoming a shadow, the straw is becoming a cloud, and the fire is becoming a memory. The transition is almost complete. We are moving from the warmth of the hearth into the absolute, cooling stillness of the dream. You are walking toward the very edge of the world, where the earth meets the sky and the past meets the present. The fire is almost gone. The room is almost dark. The night is almost yours. The faces of the ancestors are smiling in the shadows, welcoming you into the long, dark sleep that they shared for 1,000 years. They are the ghosts of peace, the spirits of the soil, and they are holding the door open for you. Listen to the absolute silence of the valley. Even the crickets have stopped. Even the cows have gone still. The world has finished its work for the day. The plow is in the shed, the grain is in the bin, and the hearth is at rest. There is no more debt to pay, no more law to follow, and no more silver to count. There is only the dark, and the dark is your friend. It is the softest blanket you have ever felt. It is the deepest water you have ever floated upon. Let yourself go. Let the story dissolve. Let the centuries fade. You are not in 1350, and you are not in the present. You are in the eternal now, the place where all souls find their sanctuary. The last spark is fading. The peat has turned to fine gray ash. The mist has swallowed the heavy oak door. You are safe in the sanctuary. You are home in the earth. The night is a vast, quiet ocean, and you are a single drop of water merging with the tide. There is no more I. There is no more you. There is only the sleep. The silence is a song without words, a lullaby that the earth sings to itself every night. Close your eyes and listen to the song. It is the oldest song in the world. It is the song of coming home. Sleep now in the sanctuary of the humble. Sleep now in the peace of the earth. Sleep now, for the fire is out. The night is complete. The earth is still. Your journey is over. Sleep, sleep, sleep. The air in the small, low-ceilinged cottage has grown incredibly still, thick with the heavy, sweet scent of dying wood smoke and the cooling, damp musk of the earth. We are drifting now into the 13th layer of our journey, echoes of resilience. This is a sacred, hidden space, a lingering and haunting mystery that remains long after the legal parchment has yellowed and the massive castle stones have crumbled into the dust of centuries. As you lie there, perfectly suspended between the waking world and the deep, velvet embrace of sleep, feel the weight of these unrecorded stories settling over you like a fine, golden mist. These are the whispers that history, in its loud and masculine arrogance, failed to capture the secrets that were never meant for the eyes of lawyers or the ears of priests. They are the echoes of women who lived, breathed, and navigated the rigid structures of 1350 with a quiet, unbreakable strength. Imagine, if you will, the small shadowed corners of the medieval world where the formal laws of men could not reach. Behind heavy oak doors, and within the steam-filled kitchens of the village, a different kind of education was taking place. This was the whispered advice passed from mother to daughter, a private lineage of survival. It wasn't written in the formal Latin of the scholars, but in the heart language of women, spoken in low tones while hands were busy spinning wool or kneading dough. "Listen, my daughter," a mother might whisper, her voice a soft rasp against the silence of the night. She would share the secrets of the secret books, not physical volumes, but mental archives of herbal wisdom and emotional navigation. These were the maps for a world that gave them no official compass, a way to find a path through the dense forest of patriarchal expectation. In the deep, lightless hours of the medieval night, the cottage became a sanctuary of charms and herbal concoctions. These were not the dark sorcery of legends, but a practical, grounded science of care and protection. Imagine a woman standing over a small, bubbling pot, her face lit only by the low orange pulse of the embers. She is preparing a tea of lemon balm and motherwort to ease a heavy heart, or a decoction of willow bark to soothe the aches of a body weary from labor. There were whispered spells, two rhythmic, melodic charms used for protection to ensure a safe birth, or to bring comfort to a child waking from a nightmare. These rituals provided a sense of agency, a way to reclaim a small piece of the world and make it safe. They used the mint to clear the mind, the mugwort to bring prophetic dreams, and the hidden seeds of the forest to manage the timing of their own lives. These were the invisible threads that held the feminine world together, a secret network of support that bypassed the heavy ironclad laws of the state. But here is the profound, empowering reveal that history often tries to bury. Many medieval women were master tacticians of their own lives. They did not always fight the system. Often, they used the system's own rigidity as a shield. The Church's forbidden days, those nearly 150 days a year when intimacy was strictly prohibited by holy law, were frequently reclaimed by women as a way to protect their bodies and secure much-needed rest. When the weight of the conjugal debt became too heavy, a woman could invoke the sanctity of a Wednesday, a Friday, or a holy feast day. In those moments, the very laws that sought to control her became her sanctuary. No husband, no matter how powerful, dared to overrule the laws of God for fear of eternal damnation. The sin was not hers. It was the divine barrier she used to defend her peace. It was a subtle, brilliant reclamation of the self, a way to find freedom within the confines of a cage. Think of a silver needle passing through heavy, dark cloth. Stitch by stitch, secret by secret, these women were embroidering their own reality onto the fabric of the Middle Ages. The work was slow, meticulous, and often invisible to the casual observer, but it was incredibly strong. Every whispered word of advice, every shared herbal remedy, and every strategically invoked holy day was a stitch in a vast, resilient tapestry of survival. As you lie there, let this image of the needle and thread soothe your mind. The rhythm of the stitching is steady and hypnotic, in and out, strength and softness. You are a part of this tapestry now, a witness to the endurance of the human spirit. The melancholic weight of their struggle is balanced by the empowering light of their ingenuity. As you breathe in the cooling night air of your own room, let these echoes of resilience become a part of your own stillness. You are not just a listener, you are a guardian of this hidden lineage. These stories do not require a trial, a witness, or a document to be real. They are safe now, tucked away in the deepest, most quiet shadows of the night, where the light of the modern world cannot reach them. They are part of the ancient rhythm of your own pulse, a reminder that there is always a secret world beneath the one we see, a world of intuition, of nature, and of quiet, enduring strength. You don't need to remember the details. You only need to feel the comfort of their existence. You are held by the wisdom of those who came before you, those who knew how to find the light even in the darkest of times. The night is reaching its absolute peak of stillness now. The crickets have long since tucked their wings into the darkness, and the wind has completely abandoned the eaves. The small orange eye of the cottage hearth has closed for the final time, leaving only the pure indigo peace of the dark. The secrets of 1350 are no longer a burden. They are a soft, heavy blanket that keeps you warm against the chill of the unknown. They are the untold, and in their silence there is a total and perfect freedom. You have seen the feast, you have heard the prayers, and you have witnessed the contracts, but now you possess the truth that was never meant to be told. You can feel the resilience of these women flowing into you, a steady stream of quiet power that anchors you to the earth. Feel your body becoming as light as the smoke that once rose to the rafters. Every modern worry, every noisy thought, and every sharp memory is dissolving into this ancient, mysterious dark. You are drifting on a sea of whispers, a vast and gentle ocean of stories that have no beginning and no end. The loop is complete, but the mystery remains, inviting you to return, to listen again, and to sink even deeper into the golden dust of the past. There is always more to find in the shadows, always another secret waiting to be whispered into the ear of a sleeper. The faces of the past are fading now, their work done, their stories entrusted to the silence of your room. The stars are shifting now, their cold, bright patterns turning slowly in the velvet sky. The long medieval night is finally, almost imperceptibly, beginning to turn to a soft charcoal gray. The first hint of dawn is still a lifetime away, but the deep indigo of the midnight hour is softening. The transition is beginning from the world of secrets to the world of dreams, and eventually to the world of light. But for now, in this sacred pressurized moment, there is only the dark. There is only the silence. There is only the deep, restorative peace of a history that has finally found its rest. Every breath you take is a stitch in the fabric of the night. Every heartbeat is a beat of the ancient drum of resilience. You are safe. You are held. You are home in the heart of the mystery. The echoes are fading, leaving you with nothing but the pure, unadulterated stillness of the present. The needle has finished its work. The cloth is complete. The story is sleeping. The earth is still. Your journey through the shadows of 1350 has reached its beautiful, quiet end. The secrets are safe. The night is long. Sleep now, for you are the witness to the untold. The long medieval night is yielding to your rest. The gray light is a promise of peace, but the dark is your current sanctuary. Breathe, rest, bite, surrender, sleep, sleep, Geist, sleep. The long, winding medieval night is finally reaching its absolute, crystalline and silent conclusion as the very first, almost imperceptible hint of morning light begins to touch the high, cold and lonely stones of the distant castle battlements. This is the 14th and final stage of our long journey together. The final fade. As you lie there in the perfect, heavy and motionless stillness of your own room, feel the immense weight of the centuries beginning to lift and dissolve into a soft, glowing and transcendental mist that surrounds your mind. The sharp, jagged edges of the 14th century, the clinking silver coins, the rustling of dry parchment, the rigid, unyielding laws of the church, and the flickering yellow candles are all blurring now, turning into a gentle, formless, and welcoming dream. Every single thought you have carried through this long night is becoming as light and as effortless as a single speck of dust dancing in a distant sunbeam that has not yet even arrived. Reflect now, in these last few lingering moments of waking consciousness, on the millions upon millions of souls who lived, loved, struggled, and navigated these awkward, terrifying, and deeply human nights through the vast, unending fog of time. They were real, breathing, and feeling people who felt the exact same chill of the stone, the same comforting warmth of the wool, and the same rapid racing of the heart that you have felt tonight. They negotiated their complex contracts. They whispered their most sacred secrets in the deep dark, and they sought their ultimate sanctuary in the earth, just as we have done together. And then, slowly, surely, and inevitably, they disappeared into the long, gray, and silent memory of history, leaving behind nothing but the quiet, sturdy foundations of the world we inhabit today. There is a profound, echoing, and absolute peace in this realization, the knowledge that all human struggles eventually find their rest, and all stories, no matter how grand, eventually find their quiet and beautiful ending. But here is the final, breathtaking, and soul-stirring reveal that anchors you to the very center of the universe. Their blood, their quiet resilience, and their very existence flow directly and powerfully into you. You are not a stranger to this history. You are its living, breathing, and most beautiful result. Their awkward, uncertain, and sometimes terrifying nights in the year 1350 are the very reason you are here today, resting in the absolute safety and the incredible comfort of the present moment. Every contract they signed with a trembling hand, every child they protected from the cold, and every long night they survived was a deliberate step toward your own life. You are the quiet, peaceful, and sun-drenched harbor at the end of their long, turbulent, and stormy journey through the ages. You are the continuation of their heartbeat, the living, pulsing proof that their endurance was worth every single moment of the terrifying dark. The world of the Middle Ages is fading away now, retreating into the soft, gray, and silent archives of the past. The heavy manor doors are locked, barred, and silent. The peasant's humble hearth has turned to cool, fine, and weightless ash. The monastery bells have finished their final lonely tolling for the night and have gone still. There is no more ink left in the well, and the long parchment of history is finally full. Every word I have spoken to you is now nothing more than a fading echo, a gentle, rhythmic vibration in the air that is slowly, perfectly merging with the absolute silence of your own room. The cognitive load of the journey is gone. The weight of the world has been lifted. The history is written. The story is complete. The night has done its work. The candles are out. The ink is dry. The heavy stone walls have turned to a soft mist. You are safe. You are home. You are exactly where you are meant to be, in the universe. Breathe in the absolute, cooling, and restorative stillness of the dawn that has not yet broken. Breathe out the very last tiny and fading remnants of the 14th century. Your limbs are as heavy as the ancient earth itself, pinned to the mattress by 1,000 years of accumulated peace and silence. Your mind is a dark, still, and perfectly clear pool, reflecting nothing but the infinite, quiet, and watchful stars above. There is no more need for any guidance, no more need for any stories, and no more need for any words. The transition is finished. The final descent is complete. You have arrived at the very end of the night, and the door to a deep, dreamless sleep is standing wide open, welcoming you into its embrace. Good night, traveler of time. Let the long, weary history sleep now. And you, my friend, you sleep with it. The night is yours. The silence is yours. The peace is yours. As the gray light of the world to come begins its slow approach, let yourself sink deeper and deeper into the velvet folds of the now. There is no tomorrow to plan for, and there is no yesterday to regret. There is only the rhythm of your breath, a slow and ancient tide that pulls you further away from the shore of the waking world. You are drifting into the great, quiet ocean of time, where all stories begin and all stories end. The shadows of the manor are gone. The smoke of the cottage is gone. The rules of the church are gone. There is only the dark, and the dark is a soft, warm, and eternal home. The silence is growing louder now, a beautiful and humming presence that fills the room and your mind. It is the sound of the earth turning. It is the sound of time resting. It is the sound of your own soul finding its place in the grand tapestry of the ages. You are held. You are protected. You are loved by the very history that brought you here. Every breath is a surrender. Every heartbeat is a release. You are falling into the softest, deepest, and most restorative sleep you have ever known. The force world is turning away from the light, and you are turning with it, moving into the fire. Center of the peace. Sleep. Sleep. Sleep.